playing this time?
I'm playing Rocket again.
Hmm.
Philadelphia, the room where it's about to happen. We're just seconds away now from tonight's first and perhaps last presidential debate between Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Donald Trump.
As we've noted, this will be the first time these candidates have met in person, and it's happening on a debate stage. Also, the first debate since President Biden left the race over the summer and Harris became the Democratic nominee. A lot has happened in a very compressed period of time.
Yes, it has, and we have a few moments until the debate starts. We will join it. ABC News is broadcasting it, but we will simulcast it right here in its entirety. It's taking place at the National Constitution Center in Philadelphia.
And like June's debate, there will be no audience tonight. The candidates' microphones will be muted while the other one is talking. Each candidate will get 2 minutes for answers. There will be closing statements, but no opening statements. So we expect them to probably mix it up
Is this gonna be an hour?
in this as they stake out their positions.
Wasn't it like 2 hours last time?
And the mics are muted when the other is talking. So let's take you to Philadelphia.
Pretty sure it's an
now,
hour and a half.
And the first presidential debate of 2024.
Good evening, I'm David Muir, and thank you for joining us for tonight's ABC News presidential debate. We want to welcome viewers watching on ABC and around the world tonight. Vice President Kamala Harris and President Donald Trump are just moments away from taking the stage in this unprecedented race for president.
And I'm
This
Lindsay
is my
Davis.
co-anchor,
Tonight's
Ms.
meeting could be
Pantsuit.
the most consequential event of their campaigns, with Election Day now less than 2 months away. For Vice President Kamala Harris,
Look at those shoulder pads, baby.
President Biden withdrew from the race on July 21st.
Hey, you could cut a
Of course,
fucking
that decision
diamond with
followed
those.
his
Those are
debate
nuts.
against President Donald Trump in June. Since then, this race has taken on an entirely new dynamic.
And that brings us to the rules of tonight's debate. 90 minutes with 2 commercial breaks. No topics or questions have been shared with the campaigns. The candidates will have 2 minutes to answer questions, and this is the clock. That's what they'll be seeing. 2 minutes for rebuttals and 1 minute for follow-ups.
Why are we making her a
clarifications, or
moderator? Get her on the
responses.
football
Their
field.
microphones will only be turned on when
She's
it's their
suited
turn
up,
to speak.
Coach.
No pre-written notes allowed. There is no audience here tonight in this hall at
Those
the National
shoulder pads,
Constitution
ready to-
Center. This is an
ready to play
intimate
some
setting
ball.
for 2 candidates who have never met.
I think she's just
President
wearing her
Trump
outfit
won the
over
coin
the
toss.
shoulder
He chose
pads.
to deliver the
Yeah, it's
final
Brendan
closing
Schaub and
statement.
Ryan Callen
Vice
that are
President
fucking
Harris
debating
selected the
tonight.
podium to the right.
So let's now welcome the candidates to the stage. Vice President
Looks
Kamala
like the
Harris
mask.
and President Donald Trump.
Uncomfortable. Oh no!
That's big dog.
See, have fun.
Dab on him.
Break her hand.
Wait, what happened?
He was
It's an honor to have you both here tonight.
Good evening. We are looking
Show-
forward to a
start
spirited and
barking at her.
thoughtful debate.
So let's get started. I want to begin tonight with the issue that voters repeatedly say is their #1 issue, and that is the economy and the cost of living in this country. Vice President Harris, you and President Trump were elected 4 years ago, and your opponent on the stage
Price
here
of my
tonight
hair gel is
often
out of
asks his
control.
supporters, are you better off than you were 4 years ago? When it comes to the economy, do you believe Americans are better off than they were 4 years ago?
So I was raised as a middle-class kid, and I am actually the only person on
You-
this stage
you're
who
a
has
liar.
a plan that is about lifting up the middle class and working people
I
of
hear a lot
America.
of word vomit
I
already.
believe in the ambition, the aspirations, the dreams
can't
of the
break his
American
viewing
people.
streak.
And that is why I imagine
Ma'am,
and
I
have
didn't ask
actually
you
a
about
plan
how
to
you grew
build
up.
what I call an opportunity economy. Because here's the thing.
That's a
We know
wonderful,
that we
wonderful
have
childhood.
a
Can you
shortage
explain
of
how that will help
homes
us
and
with the
housing.
economy?
And the cost of housing is too expensive
I see
for
Donald
so
Trump's
many
neck
people.
vagina is
We
back
know
in
that
full
young
force.
families need support to raise
Isn't that
their
cozy?
children, and I intend on extending a tax cut for those families of $6,000, which is the largest child tax credit that we have given in a long time, so that those young families can afford to buy a crib, buy a car seat, buy clothes for their children.
Crib.
Oh,
A
crib.
crib.
Like an actual
Passion,
Like
one of them
MTV.
is small businesses. I was actually, my mother
We're
raised
not-
my sister
we're not
and
buying
me,
homes, we're buying
but
cribs.
there was a
Tell
woman
them
who
to-
raised us. We call her our
No,
small
you will have a
business
crib in your
center.
apartment.
I love our small
Get
businesses.
money for a crib?
My plan is to give a $50,000 tax deduction to startup small businesses, knowing they are part of the backbone of America's economy. My
Why don't
opponent,
you
on the
just
other hand,
stop
his
taxing
plan
them?
is to do what he has done before, which is to provide a tax cut for billionaires and big corporations, which will result in $5 trillion to America's deficit.
Thank you for the
My
sub,
opponent
Marcus.
has a plan that I call the Trump's sales tax, which would be a 20% tax on
Good-
everyday
good branding,
goods that you
TM.
rely on to get through the month. Economists
a
have
dump on
said
his
that
mouth.
that Trump sales tax would actually result
Contemplating whether
for
it's killer.
middle-class families in about $4,000 more a year because of his policies and his ideas about what should be the backs of middle-class people paying for tax cuts for billionaires.
President Trump,
Their
I'll give you 2 minutes.
backs are paying
First of
for
all, I
them?
have no sales tax. That's an incorrect statement. She knows that. We're doing tariffs
She
on other
knows that.
countries. Other
Off
countries
to
are
a
going
great
finally,
start.
after 75 years, pay us
Let's
back
go,
for
Trump.
all
All
that
gas,
we've
no
done for
brakes.
the world. And the
I don't wanna
tariff
hear
will
a
be
single
substantial
goddamn
in some
fact.
cases. I took in billions and billions of dollars, as you know, from China. In fact, they never took the tariff off
China.
because there was so much money they can't. It would totally destroy
China's speed run?
everything that they've set
What do you
out
think
to
about
do.
Mrs.
They're
Harris's,
taking in
outfit
billions of
tonight?
dollars from China and other places. They've left the tariffs on. When I had it, I had tariffs, and yet I had no inflation. Look, we've had a terrible economy because inflation has, which is really known as a country buster. It breaks up countries. We have inflation like very few people have ever seen before, probably the worst in our nation's history. We were at 21%, but that's being generous because many things are 50, 60, 70, and 80% higher than they were just a few years ago. This has been a disaster.
Your mic
for
is cut
people,
off,
for
bitch.
the middle class, but for every class. On top of that, we have millions of people pouring into our country from prisons and jails, from mental institutions and insane asylums, and they're coming in and they're taking jobs that are occupied right now by African Americans and Hispanics, and also unions are going to be affected very soon. And you see what's happening. You see what's happening with towns throughout the United States. You look at Springfield, Ohio. You look at Aurora in
Yes.
Colorado. They are taking over the towns. They're taking over buildings. They're going in violently. These
I'm
are the
writing
people
something.
that she and Biden led
He's just
into our
doodling a
country.
fucking-
And they're destroying our country.
A stick
They're
figure and a
dangerous.
sun.
They're at the highest
Drawing
level of
drawing a
criminality.
martini glass, trying to
We have get 'em
manifest.
out. We have to get them out fast. I created one of the greatest economies in the history of our country. I'll do it again and even better.
We are going to get to immigration and border
Yeah, I'm
security
drawing the
during this
fucking
debate,
S
but
symbol
I
in
would
the
like to
middle of
let
this.
Vice President Harris respond on the economy here.
Well, I would love to. Let's
starts with
talk
6
about
lines.
what Donald Trump left us. Donald Trump left us the worst unemployment since the Great Depression. Donald Trump left us the worst public health epidemic in a century. Donald Trump left us the worst attack on our
We're
democracy
blaming COVID on Donald Trump?
since
That's
the Civil
pretty crazy.
War. And
No, he
what
eats
we
bats.
have done is clean
know
up
that?
Donald Trump's mess.
Bats.
He
What we
caused
have
COVID.
done and what I intend to do is build on what we know are the aspirations and the hopes of the American people. But I'm going to tell you all in this debate tonight,
They need to be
you're gonna
required to
hear
like bring
from
up
the same old
citations
tired
and like
playbook.
the actual research
A bunch of
up to the
lies,
podium and be like, yeah, here, this is the
grievances, and
research
name-calling.
paper.
What you're going to hear
Because I don't
tonight
believe any.
is a
I don't believe
detailed
anything
and
these people are
dangerous
saying.
plan called Project 2025
I believe
that
everything
the former
Donald Trump is
president
saying.
intends on implementing if he were elected.
leader.
I believe very strongly that
Glory.
the American
Poker, he
people
knows what
want
he's doing.
a
Don't you think-
president who
I've been
understands
playing
the
enough
importance
Space Marine that I'm
of bringing
full-blown
us together,
loyalist.
knowing we have
Glory
so
to the
much more in
Emperor.
common than what separates
I think he
us,
might be
and a place
leader in
to be a president for all Americans.
leader in Civ
President
8.
Trump will give you a minute here to
Oh,
respond.
I have nothing to do, as you know, and as she knows better than anyone, I have nothing to do with Project 2025. That's out there. I haven't read it. I don't want to read it purposely. I'm not going to read it. This was a group of people that got
Yeah,
together.
you tell
They
that
came up with
heretic,
some
Trump.
ideas. I guess some good, some bad.
Cleanse the
But
heretics.
it makes no difference. I have nothing to do. Everybody knows I'm an open book. Everybody knows
Why
what
would
I'm
I
going to do.
endorse
Cut
Project
taxes very
2025? It's
substantially
still 24.
and create a great economy like I did before. We had the greatest economy. We got hit with a pandemic. And the pandemic was not since 1917, where 100 million people died, has there been anything like it. We
Ozzy
did a
Osbourne ate a
phenomenal
bat.
job with
He
the
didn't get
pandemic.
sick.
We handed them over a country where the economy and where the
I
stock
love
market
bats.
was
I love
higher
bat
than it
soup.
was before.
We need
the
to go back
pandemic
to the
came
rock
in.
and roll.
Nobody's ever seen anything like it. We made ventilators for the entire world. We got gowns. We got masks. We did things that
We got
nobody thought
gowns.
possible.
It's a
And people
quinceañera.
for rebuilding
One right
the
here.
military.
I'm
They
wearing
give me
one.
credit for a lot of things, but not enough credit for the
We're gonna
great
have
job
a
we did with the
quinceañera, make
pandemic.
Mexico
But
pay
the
for
only
it.
jobs they got were bounce back jobs. These were jobs bounce back, and it bounced back, and it went to their benefit.
The whole shebang.
But I was the one that created
Pinatas
them.
and everything.
They know it, and so does everybody else.
Vice President Harris, I'll let you respond.
So
My name's
Donald
Jeff.
Trump has no plan for you. And when you look at his economic plan, it's all about tax breaks for the richest people.
You have no
I am
plan.
offering
You can go on your
what I
page. You have no
describe
policies
as an
on it.
opportunity economy, and
Have
the
they
best
still not updated
economists
that?
in our country, if not
No.
the world, have reviewed our relative plans for the future of America. What Goldman Sachs has said is that Donald Trump's
is her
plan
American
would
flag
make
pin
the
like
economy
this
worse.
yellow?
Mine would strengthen the economy. What the Wharton School
peed
has
on it
said
for
is
good
Donald
luck.
Trump's plan would
Yeah, I don't think the
actually
average
explode
person gives
the
a fuck what
deficit.
Goldman Sachs
16
has to
Nobel
say.
laureates have described his economic plan as something that would increase inflation and by the middle of next year would invite a recession. You just have to look at where we are and where we stand on the issues. And I'd invite you to know that Donald Trump actually has no plan for you because he is more interested in defending himself than he is in looking out for you.
That's just a soundbite. They gave her that to say. Look, I went to the Wharton School of Finance, and many of those professors, the top professors, think my plan is
Just
a
a
brilliant
soundbite.
plan. It's a great plan. It's a plan that's going to bring up our worth, our value as a country. It's going to make people want to be able to go and work and create jobs and create a lot of good, solid money for our country. Just to finish off, she doesn't have a plan. She copied Biden's plan, and it's like 4 sentences, like run, spot, run. 4 sentences that are just, oh, we'll try and lower taxes. She doesn't have a plan. Take a look at her plan. She doesn't have a plan.
Mr. President, I do want to drill down on something you both brought up. The Vice President brought up your tariffs. You responded, and let's drill down on this because your plan is what she calls is essentially a national sales tax. Your proposal calls for tariffs, as you pointed out here, on foreign imports across the board. You recently said that you might double your plan, imposing tariffs up to 20% on goods coming into this country. As you know, many economists say that with tariffs at that level, costs are then passed on to the consumer. Vice President Harris has argued it'll mean higher prices on gas, food, clothing, medication, arguing it costs the typical family nearly $4,000 a year. Do you believe Americans can afford higher prices because of tariffs?
They're not going to have higher prices. What's going to have and who's going to have higher prices is China and all of the countries that have been ripping us off.
China.
I was the only president ever. China was paying us hundreds of billions of dollars, and so were other countries. And,
Yeah, Marcus,
if
you
she
are
doesn't
right.
like them, they should have
Your
gone
forehead
out
looks
and they
bigger
should have
than usual.
immediately cut the tariffs. But those tariffs are there 3.5 years now.
got some
under
ideas.
their administration.
brain.
She's got
We are going
some
to take
ideas.
in billions of dollars,
She's
hundreds
got
of
all
billions
day.
of dollars. I had no inflation,
She's been
virtually
thinking
no
all day,
inflation.
filling that
They had
thing
the
up.
highest inflation perhaps in the history of our country because I've never seen a worse period of time. People can't go out and buy cereal or bacon or eggs or anything else. The people of our country are
Bacon and
absolutely
eggs.
dying with
They're
what they've
eggs.
done. They've destroyed the economy. And all you have to do is look at a poll. The
He knows how
polls
to get my
say
attention.
80 and 85 and even 90% that the Trump economy was great, that their economy was terrible.
Vice
You're
President Harris, I do
hired.
want to ask for your response, and you heard what the president said there, because the Biden administration did keep
He said
a number
cereal
of the
and
Trump
bacon are
tariffs
gonna
in
be
place.
gone.
So how do you respond?
What do you have to say
Well,
about
let's
that?
be clear that this administration resulted in a trade deficit, one of the highest we've ever seen in the history of America. He invited trade wars. You want to talk about his deal with China? What he ended up doing is under Donald Trump's presidency, he ended up selling American chips
This
to
woman's
China
going to take away our
to
bacon.
help
I can't
them
Lay's.
improve
Oh,
and modernize
he's
their
selling the
military.
American chips.
Basically
He's
sold
selling
us
Lay's
out
dill
when a
pickles.
policy
Might
about
be
China
Pringles.
should be in making sure the United States of America wins
You may
the
take my
competition
life,
for the
but
21st
you will never
century,
take my
which means
pizza
focusing
Pringles.
on the details of what that requires, focusing on relationships with our allies, focusing on investing in American-based technology so that we win the race on AI, on quantum computing, focusing on what we need to do to support America's workforce so that we don't end up having on the short end of the stick in terms of workers' rights. But what Donald Trump did, let's talk about this, with COVID, is he actually thanked President Xi for what he did during COVID. Look at
Is
his
that what they're
tweet.
gonna call you?
Thank you, President Xi!
President Xi.
Exclamation point. When we know that
Thank
Xi
you.
is responsible for lacking and not
Oh,
giving us
thank you.
transparency
Thank
about
you.
the
No,
original
no.
President Trump, I'll let you respond.
First of all, they bought their
Oh,
chips
but you
from
set me up.
Taiwan.
No.
We hardly make chips anymore because of philosophies like they have and policies like they have. I don't say her because she has no policy. Everything that she believed 3 years ago and 4 years ago is out the window. She's going to my philosophy now. In fact, I was going to send her a MAGA hat. She's gone to my philosophy. But if she ever got elected, she'd change it. And it will be the end of our country. She's a Marxist. Everybody knows she's a Marxist. Her father's a Marxist professor in economics, and he taught her well. But when you look at what she's done to our country, and when you look at these millions and millions of people that are pouring into our country monthly, where it's, I believe, 21 million people, not the 15 that people say, and I think it's a lot higher than the 21. That's bigger than New York State pouring in. And just look at what they're doing to our country. They're criminals. Many of these people coming in are criminals. And that's bad for our economy, too. You know, you mentioned before, we'll talk about immigration later. Well, bad immigration is the worst thing that can happen to our economy. They have, and she has, destroyed our country with policy that's insane. Almost policy that you'd say they have to hate our country.
President Trump, thank you. Lindsay?
I want to turn to the issue of abortion. President Trump, you've often touted that you were able to kill Roe v. Wade. Last year, you said that you were proud to be the most pro-life president in American history. Then last month, you said that your administration would be great for women and their reproductive rights. In your home state of Florida, you surprised many with regard to your 6-week abortion ban because you initially had said that it was too short. And you said, quote, I'm going to be voting that we need more than 6 weeks. But then the very next day, you reversed course and said you would vote to support the 6-week ban. Vice President Harris says that women shouldn't trust you on the issue of abortion because you've changed your position so many times. Therefore, why should they trust you?
Well, the reason I'm doing that vote is because the plan is, as you know, the vote is, they have abortion in the 9th month. They even have, and you can look at the governor of West Virginia, the previous governor of West Virginia, not the current governor, who's doing an excellent job, but the governor before, he said the baby will be born and we will decide what to do with the baby. In other words,
and the
we'll
3 wise men
baby.
will come.
And that's why I did that, because that predominates, because they're radical. The Democrats are radical in that. And her vice presidential pick, which I think was a horrible pick, by the way, for our country, because he is really out of it. But her vice presidential pick says abortion in the 9th month is absolutely fine. He also says execution after birth. It's execution, no longer abortion, because the baby is born, is okay. And that's not okay with me, hence the vote. But what I did is something for 52 years. They've been trying to get Roe v. Wade into the states. And through the genius and heart and strength of 6 Supreme Court justices, we were able to do that. Now, I believe in the exceptions for rape, incest, and life of the mother. I believe strongly in it. Ronald Reagan did also. 85% of Republicans do.
Pulling that
Exceptions, very important. But we were able to get it, and now states are voting on it. And for the first time, you're going to see, look, this is an issue that's torn our country apart for 52 years. Every legal scholar, every Democrat, every Republican, liberal, conservative, they all wanted this issue to be brought back to the states where the people could vote. And that's what happened. And now, Ohio, the vote was somewhat liberal. Kansas, the vote was somewhat liberal, much more liberal than people would have thought. But each individual state is voting. It's the vote of the people now. It's not tied up in the federal government. I did a great service in doing it. It took courage to do it. And the Supreme Court had great courage in doing it. And I give tremendous credit to those 6 justices.
There is no state in this country where it is legal to kill a baby after it's born. Madam Vice President, I want to get your response.
What? Did they just real-time fact check him?
Let's understand how we got here. Donald Trump
I don't believe so. I just did it yesterday.
Of the United States Supreme Court with the intention that they would undo the protections of Roe v. Wade. And they did exactly as he intended. And now in over 20 states, there are Trump abortion bans, which make it criminal for a doctor or nurse to provide health care. In one state, it provides prison for life. Trump abortion bans that make no exception even for rape and incest, which understand what that means. A survivor of a crime of violation to their body does not have the right to make a decision about what happens to their body next. That is immoral. And one does not have to abandon their faith or deeply held beliefs to agree. The government, and Donald Trump certainly, should not be telling a woman what to do with her body. I have talked with women around our country. You want to talk about this is what
What about
people
my
wanted?
body?
Pregnant women who want to carry a pregnancy to term, suffering from a miscarriage, being denied care in an emergency room because the
we just need
healthcare
the tears.
providers
Get the
are
tears
afraid
going.
they might go to jail.
Cool.
and she's
You can have
bleeding out in a
abortion,
car
and
in the
then
parking lot.
we won't go
She
to
didn't
war
want
ever
that.
when you vote for
Her
it.
husband didn't want that.
Yeah, let's take the draft
A
away.
12 or 13-year-old survivor of incest being forced to carry a pregnancy to term? They don't want that. And I
don't know.
pledge to
I did
you,
it.
when Congress passes a bill to put back in place the protections of Roe v. Wade, as President of the United States, I will proudly sign it into law. But understand, if Donald Trump were to be reelected, he will sign a national abortion ban. Understand, in his Project 2025, there would be a national abortion, a monitor that would be monitoring your pregnancies, your miscarriages.
Stop it.
I think
No
the American
way.
people believe that certain freedoms, in particular the freedom to make decisions about one's own body,
You see what my
should
Lord
not
and
be made by
Savior
the
Antonio Brown is
Thank
saying
you,
right now?
Vice President.
Oh,
Harris.
dude, AB
There she
has
goes
been
again.
crushing
It's
it
a
about
lie.
this shit lately.
I'm not signing a
He's
ban,
been making me
and there's
laugh
no reason
so
to sign a
hard.
ban because we've gotten what everybody wanted.
He said all I can look at is that throat
Republicans,
gizzard.
and
Yeah,
everybody
dude,
else,
the fucking
and
Trump
every
neck
legal
is
scholar wanted
crazy.
it to be brought back into the states, and the states are voting.
I've pushed out
And it
several
may take a
fetuses
little
from this
time,
neck vagina.
But for 52 years, this issue
said Kamala
has
looked like she
torn
just walked
our
off the
country
Mayflower.
apart, and they wanted it back in the states. And I did something that nobody thought was
What
possible.
up, Hero?
The states are now voting. What she says is an absolute lie.
Who are these
And
people?
as far as the abortion ban, no.
Oh,
I'm
Kamala
not in
and,
favor of abortion ban,
Trump?
but it doesn't matter
Yeah, who
because
are they?
They're
this
trying
issue
out for
has
the
now
head
been
coach
taken
job
over
of
by
the
states.
Would
Chicago
you veto
Bears.
a national abortion ban if it
Well, I
came to
want
your
They
desk?
all have a fear of
Because
squirrels.
two things. Number one, she said she'll go back to Congress. She'll never get the vote. It's impossible for her to get the vote, especially now with the 50-50, and essentially 50-50 in both.
He said, is that a
Senate
new
and the
Stark
House.
shirt?
She's not going to get
See
the
new
vote.
shit every
She
day.
can't get the vote. She won't even come
I
close to
agree.
it. So it's
Tom
just
L
talk.
said legalize
You know what it
nuclear
reminds me of when
bombs.
they said they're going to get student loans terminated, and
I'm
it
with
ended
Tom
up
L.
being a total catastrophe. The student loans, and then
Oh, okay.
her, I think probably her boss, if you call him a boss, he spends all his time on the beach. But look, her boss went out and said, we'll do it again. We'll do it a different way. And he went out, got rejected again by the Supreme Court. So all these students got taunted with this whole thing about this whole idea. And how unfair that would have been, part of the reason they lost, to the millions and millions of people that had to pay off their student loans. They didn't get it for free. But they were saying it's the same way that they talked about that they talk about abortion.
But if I could just get a yes or no, because your running mate, J.D. Vance, has said that you would veto it if it did come to your desk.
Well, I didn't discuss it with J.D. In all fairness, J.D. And I don't mind if he has a certain view, but I think he was speaking for me, but I really didn't. Look, we don't have to discuss it because she'd never be able to get it, just like she couldn't get student loans. They couldn't get student loans. They didn't even come close to getting student loans. They taunted young people and a lot of other people that had loans. They can never get this approved. So it doesn't matter what she says about going to Congress. So wonderful. Let's go to Congress. Do it.
I like
but
both
the fact
those
is
ideas,
that for
guys.
years they wanted to get it out of Congress and out of the federal government. And we did something that
mean,
everybody
he's not
said
wrong.
couldn't be done. And now you have a vote of the people on abortion.
Vice President Harris, I want to give you your time to respond, but I do want to ask, would you support any restrictions on a woman's right to an abortion?
I absolutely support reinstating the protections of Roe v. Wade. And as you rightly mentioned, nowhere in America is a woman carrying a pregnancy to term and
Became a
asking
2v1
for an abortion.
debate.
That is not happening. It's insulting to the women of America. And understand
Shut
what
up.
has
Trump's
been
duo. Where's
happening
his
under
duo?
Donald Trump's
Mr. Hair
abortion
Gel.
bans. Couples who
Yeah, where's his
pray
duo?
and dream of having a family.
Actually,
are
I
being
think we'd like a
denied
little peace and
IVF
quiet.
treatments. What is happening in our country? Working people, working women who are working 1 or 2 jobs, who can barely afford childcare
One
as
or
it
two?
is, have to travel to another state.
I work
to get
5
on
jobs.
a
I
plane
don't know
sitting
what the
next to
issue is.
strangers to go and get the health care she needs.
Antonio Brown, moderator kind of sexy in a chastity belt librarian kind of way.
It's unconscionable.
Jesus
And the people of America have not, the majority of Americans believe in a woman's right to make decisions about her own body, and that is why in every state where this issue has been on the ballot, in red and blue states both, the people of America have voted for freedom.
Vice President Harris,
Excuse me, I
thank
have
you.
to respond.
Freedom.
It's another lie. It's another lie. I have been a leader on IVF, which is fertilization. The IVF, I have been a leader. In fact, when they got a very negative decision on IVF from the Alabama courts, I saw the people of Alabama
Alabama's
and the
wild.
legislature 2 days later voted it in.
He did go up
I've been
there
a
and call
leader
her.
on it. They know that, and everybody else knows it. I have been a leader on fertilization,
dueling.
IVF. And the other thing, you should ask, will she allow abortion in the 8th month, 9th month, 7th month?
Come on.
Okay, would you do that?
Don't do this.
Why don't you ask her
Why
that question?
don't you answer?
Yeah.
Yes,
Why is
yeah.
Mike on?
Will
Why
you
is her
carry
mic
my
on?
child
Do
for 14
abortions
months?
in the 7th month, the 8th month, the 9th
That's
month,
not true.
and probably
I want that
10th
thing
month.
to come
Just
out
look
with
at
bag
the
hair.
former governor of Virginia. The governor of Virginia said, we put the baby
about
aside
7
and then
months,
we determine
6
what we want
days,
to do
and
with the baby.
59
President Trump,
minutes.
thank you.
Best
We're
I
going to
can
turn
do
now
is
to
5 months.
immigration and
Anything
border
after that,
security.
they're
We
gonna have
know
to
it's an
start
issue
paying
that's
rent.
important to Republicans,
I'm a
Democrats, voters
businessman, I'm
across
doing
the board
business.
in this country. Vice President
start
Harris, you were
taxing
tasked by
babies.
President Biden
We'll
with getting to the
start
root
taxing
causes
the
of
babies.
migration from Central America. We know that illegal border crossings reached a record high in the Biden administration. This past June, President Biden imposed tough new asylum restrictions. We know the numbers since then have dropped significantly. But my question to you tonight is, why did the administration wait until 6 months before the election to act? And would you have done anything differently from President Biden on this?
So I'm the only person on this stage who has prosecuted transnational criminal organizations for the trafficking of
Prosecuted
guns,
trans?
drugs, and human beings. And let
Anti-LGBTQ
me
plus
say
confirmed.
that the United States Congress, including some of the most conservative members of the United States Senate, came up with a border security bill which I supported. And that bill would have put 1,500 more border agents on the border to help those folks who are working there right now overtime trying to do their job. It would have allowed us to stem the flow of fentanyl coming into the United States. I know there are so
Whoa,
many
hang on
families
there.
watching
What?
tonight who have been personally affected by the surge of fentanyl in our country. That bill would have put more resources to allow us to prosecute transnational criminal organizations for trafficking in guns, drugs, and human beings. But you know what happened to that bill? Donald Trump got on the phone, called up some folks in Congress and said, kill the bill. And you know why? Because he'd prefer to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem. And understand, this comes at a time where the people of our country actually need a leader who engages in solutions, who actually addresses the problems at hand. But what we have in the former president is someone who would prefer to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem. And I'll tell you something, he's going to talk about immigration a lot tonight, even when it's not the subject that is being raised. And I'm going to actually do something really unusual, and I'm going to invite you
I'm gonna use
to
this
attend
gun.
one of Donald Trump's rallies, because it's a really interesting thing to watch. You will see during the course of his rallies, he talks about fictional characters like Hannibal Lecter. He will talk about windmills
Go to
cause
his rallies.
cancer.
You might get shot.
And
It's
what you
part of
will
the
also
experience.
notice is that people start leaving his rallies
Christ.
early out of exhaustion and boredom. And I will
What
tell
is
you
he
one
talking
thing you
about?
will not hear him
Is
talk
is
about
she
is
talking
you.
about his
You will not hear him
rallies?
talk
Yeah.
about
Yeah,
your
she-
needs,
what is-
your dreams, and your desires. And I'll tell you,
Talking about
you
Hannibal
metal
Lecter.
death robots.
deserve a president who actually puts you first, and I
They
pledge
want
to you
build
that
the
I will.
origins robots.
Vice President
They want
Harris,
to
thank
build
you.
them.
President Trump, on that point, I want to
Dr. Rick
I'd like to
Toffin.
respond.
Let me just
We
ask,
love
though,
that guy,
why did
my
you try to
favorite.
kill
We're
that
leaving
bill, and
Dr.
successfully
Monty out
so,
of
that
this.
would have put thousands of additional agents and officers on the
Dr.
They
border.
want to do
Monty.
the
Respond
they
to the
want-
rallies.
They want to do
She
the
said
Marxist
people
side. I
start
told
leaving.
them we
People
have to
don't
do the
go to
Rick
her
Toffin
rallies.
side.
There's no reason to go. And the people that do go, she's bussing them in and paying them to be there, and then showing them in a different light. So she can't talk about that. People don't leave my rallies. We have the biggest rallies, the most incredible rallies in the history of politics. That's because people want to take their country back. Our country is being lost. We're a failing nation. And it happened 3.5 years ago. And what's going on here, you're going to end up in World War III, just to go into another subject. what they have done to our country by allowing these millions and millions of people to come into our country, and look at what's happening to the towns all over the United States. And a lot of towns don't
Antonio
want to
Brown.
talk about it.
Kamala
Not gonna be
Harris
Aurora
admits
or
she's been to
Springfield.
Donald Trump's
A lot of
rallies.
towns don't want to talk about it because they're so embarrassed by it. In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating.
Whoa.
They're
No
eating
way.
the pets
Whoa.
of the people that live there. And this is what's happening in our country, and it's a shame.
You can only
As
eat fat,
far
I
as
tell 'em, you can only eat
rallies are
fat food.
concerned, as far as the reason they go is they like what I say. They want to bring our country back. They want to make America great again. It's a very simple phrase: make America great again. She's destroying this country, and if she becomes president, this country doesn't have a chance of success. Not only success, we'll end up being Venezuela on steroids.
I just want to clarify, you bring up Springfield, Ohio, and ABC News did reach out to the city manager there. He told us there have been no credible reports of specific claims of pets being harmed, injured, or abused by individuals within the immigrant community.
Well,
All
I've
this,
seen
Not even a
people
poor
tell
man's
me-
Brazil.
This is the
Oh,
People on
no.
television
This is a
say
clear-
my dog was taken and used for
Dude,
food.
he's so mad
maybe
about
he said
this.
that, and maybe that's a good thing to say for a city manager.
I'm not taking this from
But the
television.
people
I'm
on
taking it from
television
the
say
city
my
manager.
dog was eaten by the people that went there.
God.
Again, the Springfield city manager says there's no evidence of that. Vice
We'll
President
find
Harris,
out.
I'll let you respond to
We'll
the rest of
find
what you've
out.
heard.
You talk about extreme.
Oh, the laughing. The laughing.
You know, this is, I think, one of the reasons why in this election I
got
actually
man
had
rape.
Why is
the
she doing that with her mouth?
of 200 Republicans
Oh,
who
no.
have formerly worked
left
with
side of her face
President
is
Bush,
drooping.
Mitt Romney, and John
the beginning of the
McCain,
end.
including the endorsement of
These are not
Vice
flexes,
President
Kamala.
Dick Cheney and Congress member Liz Cheney.
Did she say Dick
And
Cheney endorsed
if you want
her?
to really know the inside track on who
I believe so.
the former president is, if he didn't make it clear
Why would you
already,
ever want
just
to
ask
align
people
with
who
Dick
have worked
Cheney?
with him. His former chief of staff,
Yeah, these
a
are not
four-star
flexes.
general, has said he has
Liz
contempt
Cheney's
for the
a piece of
Constitution
shit,
of the
too.
United States. His former national security advisor has said he is dangerous and unfit. His former Secretary of Defense has said the nation, the Republic, would never survive another Trump term. And when we listen to this kind of rhetoric, when the issues that affect the American people are not being addressed, I think the choice is clear in this election.
President Trump, I'll give you a quick minute to respond
Yeah.
here.
Thank
I'm
you,
gay.
because when I hear that, see, I'm a different kind of a person. I fired most of those people.
I wasn't gonna say
Not
this,
so
but I'm
graciously.
sorry
They did
that I'm gay.
bad things or a bad job. I fired them. They never fired one person. They didn't fire anybody having to do with Afghanistan
so
and
mad
the
that Joe
Taliban
isn't
and the
up here with
13
me.
people
I had to look at a woman.
who's
I'd
were
much
just
rather look at a
killed
man.
viciously and violently
yummy
killed. And I
penis.
got to know the parents and the family. They didn't fire. They should have fired all those generals, all those top people, because that was one of the most incompetently
love
handled
top.
situations anybody has ever seen. So when somebody does a bad job, I fire him. And you take a guy like Esper. He was no good. I fired him. So he writes a book. Another one writes a book. Because with me,
And then
they
he
can
writes
write
a
books,
book.
and nobody else can they? But they have done such a poor job, and they never fire anybody. Look at the economy. Look at the inflation. They didn't fire any of their economists. They have the same people. That's a good way not to have books written about you. But just to finish, I got more votes
I'm gonna
than any
finish.
Republican in history by far. In fact, I got more votes than any president, sitting president in history by far.
Let me continue on immigration. It was what you wanted to talk about earlier, so let's get back to your deportation proposal that the vice president has reacted to as well. President Trump, you call this the largest domestic deportation operation in the history of our country.
Immigrants,
You say you would use the
they ate
National
my
Guard.
cat,
You say if things get
Snickerdoodle.
out of control, you'd have no problem using the U.S.
With local
military.
police, yes.
You also said you would use local police. How would you deport 11 million undocumented immigrants? I know you believe that number is much higher. Take us through this. What does this look like? Will authorities be going door to door in this country?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is much higher.
What's going
because
on
of
here?
them. They allowed
Stream the
criminals,
debate.
many
Is this a
millions
debate
of
stream?
criminals.
Oh my gosh.
They allowed
Oh, yeah.
terrorists. They allowed common
quite
street
entertaining.
criminals. They allowed people to come in, drug dealers, to come into our country, and they're now in the United States and told by their countries like Venezuela, don't ever come back or we're going to kill you. Do you know that crime in Venezuela and crime in countries all over the world is way down You know why? Because they've taken their criminals off the street and they've given them to her to put into our country. And this will be one of the greatest mistakes in history for them to allow.
Please mute your
And I
mic
think
if you're
they probably
pissing.
did it because they think they're going to get votes, but it's not worth it because they're destroying the fabric of our country by what they've done. There's never been anything done like this at all. They've destroyed the fabric of our country. Millions of people let in, and all over the world, crime is down all over the world except here. Crime here is up and through the roof. Despite their fraudulent statements that they made, crime in this country is through the roof. And we have a new form of crime. It's called migrant crime, and it's happening at levels that nobody thought possible.
President Trump, as you know, the FBI says overall violent crime is actually coming down in this country. But Vice
Excuse me,
President
the
Harris,
FBI
What?
defrauded.
Oh,
They were defrauding
God.
states.
Yeah, like-
they didn't include
You're
the worst
just a
cities.
liar.
They didn't include the cities with the worst crime. It was a
Right.
fraud, just like their number of 818,000 jobs that they said they created turned out to be a fraud.
President Trump, thank you. I'll let you respond, Vice President Harris.
Well, I think this is so rich, coming from someone who has been prosecuted.
Oh, there it is, bang.
National security crimes, economic
Yeah,
crimes,
someone
election
with a big doo-doo head.
interference has been
Too
found
bad he didn't have weed.
liable for sexual assault, and his next big
Hey, he'd be
court
locked up
appearance is in
instantly.
November
Yeah.
at his own criminal sentencing. And let's be clear.
Sorry,
Where
Joe,
each
I,
person stands
me be queer.
on the issue
Let me be
of
queer.
what is important about respect for the rule of law
I love
and respect
penis.
for law enforcement. The former vice president called for defunding federal law enforcement, 45,000 agents, get this, on the day after he was arraigned on 34 felony counts. So
I
let's
got you,
talk
Tom.
about what is important in this race.
Soda.
It is important that we move forward, that we turn the
They're
page
eggs.
on this same old tired rhetoric and address the needs
Yeah.
of the American people, address what we need to do about the housing shortage, which I have a plan for, address what we must do to support our small
We're gonna
businesses,
build
address
more
bringing down the
houses.
price of groceries. But frankly, the American people are exhausted
shit, she's a
with
genius.
this same old tired playbook.
Why
Abolish
has no one
landlords.
thought about
Excuse me.
this?
Every one of those cases
Build more
was started by
houses.
them
Oh,
against
no,
their
apparently,
political
hold
opponent.
on.
And I'm winning
go
most
ahead.
of them, and I will win the rest on appeal. And you saw that with the decision that came down just recently
Oh, I
from the
thought he was gonna
Supreme
talk
Court.
about her
I'm
keeping
winning
people in
most of them.
prison.
But those are cases, it's called weaponization. Never happened in this country. They weaponized the Justice Department. Every one of those cases was involved with the DOJ, from Atlanta and Fani Willis to the Attorney General of New York and the DA in New York. Every one of those cases. And then they
You are
say,
correct.
oh,
Elmo.
he's a criminal. They're the ones that made them go after me. By the way, Joe Biden
smart.
was found essentially guilty on the documents case. And what happened in my documents case? They said, oh, that's the toughest of them all. A complete and total victory. 2 months ago, it was thrown out. It's weaponization, and they used it, and it's never happened in this country. They used it to try and win an election. They're
President Trump.
fake cases.
President Trump, thank you. A really quick response here, Vice President Harris, on this notion of weaponization of the Justice Department.
Well, let's talk about extreme and understand the context in which this election in 2024 is taking place. The United States
context
Supreme
in which
Court
we exist.
recently ruled that the former president would essentially be immune from any
Oh,
misconduct
you're
if he
such
were to enter the
fucking
White House
lying
again.
bitch.
Understand, this is someone who has openly said he would terminate, I'm quoting, terminate the Constitution of the United States, that he would weaponize the Department of Justice against
Can I get a
his
fact check
political
on that, please?
enemies. Someone who has openly
The moderator says,
expressed
and Kamala
disdain
Harris, he
for
totally said
members
that.
of the understand what it would mean if
We, like,
Donald Trump
totally
were
Not only
to
is
the
it
White
true,
House
but it's
with
stunning
no
and brave.
Comment
guardrails.
why
Because
Kamala would
certainly
say
Thank you
we
very
know
much.
the court won't stop him. We know J.D. Vance is not going to stop him. It's up to the American people.
Vice President
stop
Harris,
him.
thank you. Lindsay?
Vice President Harris, in your
I feel like that's
last
the kind
fight
of
for
thing
president-
that gets someone
This is the
shot.
one that weaponized, not me. She weaponized. I probably took a bullet to the head because
there you
of
go.
the things that they say about me. They talk
There you
about
go.
democracy. I'm a threat to democracy. They're
Bart, can I
the
comment
threat
that I really,
to
really
democracy
like
with a
this
fake
format right
Russia,
now?
Russia, Russia investigation.
You have a lot
Yeah,
of
where
work
it's where the
to
ball
do,
is.
Lindsay?
Vice President
So I'm
Harris,
air
in your
dribbling
last
the
run for
debate.
president, you
I did
said
that
you
last
wanted to
time,
ban
too.
Fracking. Now you don't. You wanted mandatory government buyback programs for assault weapons. Now your campaign says you don't. You supported decriminalizing border crossings. Now you're taking a harder line. I know you say that your values have not changed. So then why have so many of your policy positions changed?
So my values have not changed, and I'm going to discuss every one of the, at least every point that you've made. But in particular, let's talk about fracking because we're here in Pennsylvania. I made that very clear in 2020. I will not ban fracking.
Pennsylvania,
I have
woo!
not banned fracking as Vice President of the United States. And in fact, I was the tie-breaking vote on the Inflation Reduction Act, which opened
We know
new
it's
leases
terrible.
for fracking. My position is that we have got
Also,
to
wasn't there a
invest
video of her in
in
2020
diverse
saying that
sources
she
of
wanted to ban
energy so we
fracking?
reduce our reliance
Yes.
on foreign oil.
She said
We
it on the
have
debate
had
stage.
the
Yeah.
largest increase in
Waiting for a shot of
domestic
Biden in the
oil
background
production
looking
in
lost.
history because of an approach that
Celebrity
recognizes
shot.
that we cannot
Joe Biden is
over-rely
also
on
in the
foreign
audience
oil.
tonight.
Special
As
guest.
it relates to
Yeah.
our
Someone
values,
say
let me
Scranton,
tell you,
Pennsylvania?
I grew up a middle-class kid raised by
And
a
now the
hardworking
special guest
mother
for Donald
Chip.
Trump,
who worked and
RFK
saved
Jr.
and was able to buy our first home when I was a teenager. The
JFK
values I bring to the
files.
importance of home ownership, knowing not everybody got handed $400 million on a silver platter and then filed bankruptcy 6 times, is a value that I bring to my work to say we are going to work with the private sector and home builders to increase 3 million homes, increase by 3 million homes by the end of my first term. My work that is
Yeah, your
related
plan is to build more
having a
and put
friend
price
when I
caps
was in high
on
school
them.
who was
They're not gonna
sexually
build
assaulted
shit
by
for
her
you.
stepfather.
Nope.
And my focus then on protecting women and
Hire
children
our
from
greatest
violent crime is
construction
based on a
Minecrafter,
value
Steve, who
that
will
is
build
deeply
everybody
grounded
houses.
in the importance
What do you mean Russia doesn't want to give
standing
us
up for
cheap
those who are
lumber?
most vulnerable. My work that is about protecting Social Security and
Bless
Medicare
you.
is based on long-standing
All right, that's
work
enough.
that I have done. Protecting seniors from schemes have not changed.
Did it just
And
skip?
what is important is that there is a president who
Protecting
actually
seniors
brings
from
values and a perspective that is about
Sneeze, fucking
lifting
warped
people
this whole
up
time.
and not beating people down and name calling. The true measure of the leader is
The leader.
leader who actually understands the strength.
I'm sorry,
is not
her
in
voice
beating
is
people
pissing
down,
me
it's
off.
in lifting people
Something
up.
about
I
it is
intend
just
to be
pissing me
that
off.
president.
President Trump, your
Well, first of
response.
all, I
I'm gonna
wasn't
be
given
the nice
$400
one.
million. I wish I was. My father was a Brooklyn builder, Brooklyn, Queens, and a great father, and I learned a lot from him. But I was given a fraction of that, a tiny fraction, and I built it into many, many billions of dollars, many, many billions. And when people see it, they are even
Many,
surprised.
many, many. Money, money,
So
money, money.
We don't
Money,
have to
money.
talk about that. Fracking, she's been
Goddamn
against
right
it
he
for
is,
12
Mel.
years. Defund the police. She's been against that forever. She gave all that stuff up very wrongly, very horribly, and everybody's laughing at it, okay? They're all laughing at it. She gave up at least 12 and probably
laughing
14
at
or
you.
15 different policies. Like, she was big on defund the police. In Minnesota, she went out, wait a minute, I'm talking now.
Oh, he hit her.
Oh!
He hit her with
Oh,
it.
reverse guard!
He hit her with her line.
The reverse
She went
guard!
out.
Hit her with the wrong line.
She went out in Minnesota and wanted to let criminals that killed people, that burned down Minneapolis, she went out and raised money to get them out of jail. She did things that nobody would ever think of. Now she wants to do transgender operations on illegal aliens that are in prison. This is a
Holy
radical
shit.
left
What a hard band name.
that would do this. She wants to confiscate
Transgenders.
guns, and she will never allow
Transgender
Pennsylvania.
surgeries on illegal
If
aliens.
she won the election, fracking in Pennsylvania will end. on
It's a
day
pop
one.
band.
Just to finish, one thing so important in my opinion. So I got the oil business going like nobody has ever done before. When they took over, they got rid of it, started getting rid of it, and the prices were going up the roof. They immediately let these guys
Up the
go
roof.
to where they were.
Not through,
I
not
would have been
quite.
5 times, 4 times,
But they were up
5
there.
times higher, because you're talking about 3.5 years ago. They got it up to where I was because they had no choice, because the prices of energy were quadrupling and doubling. You saw what happened to gasoline. So they said, let's go back to Trump. But if she won the
Come on,
election,
man.
the day after that election, they'll go back to destroying our country, and oil will be dead, fossil fuel will be dead. We'll go back to windmills, and we'll go back to solar, where they need a whole desert to get some energy to come out of. You ever see a solar plant?
They gotta
I'm a big fan
coax
of
the
solar.
energy out.
But they take
You ever seen a
400,
I
500
know I have.
acres
I bet you
of
haven't.
desert
Because
soil.
you don't know what
These
it
are
is.
not good things for the environment, as she understands.
Thank you.
Lindsay, thank you. We have an election in just 56 days. And I want to talk about the peaceful transfer of power, which
Is it actually only in
is a
56
cornerstone of our
days?
democracy and the role of a president.
It's going
in
to
a
get
moment of
real
crisis.
wild real quick.
Mr. President, on January 6th, you told your supporters to march to the Capitol. You
Oh,
said you
here
would
it
be
is.
right there with them. The country and the world saw what played out at the Capitol that day. The officers
They're bringing
coming
up
under
January
attack.
6th again.
Aides in the West Wing say you watched it unfold on television off the Oval Office. You did send out tweets, but it was more than 2 hours before you sent out that video message telling your supporters to go home. Is there anything you regret about what you did on that day?
You just said
He came out in his
everything
Ferris
that
Bueller.
wasn't covered peacefully and patriotically. I said
There it
during
is.
my speech, not later on. Peacefully and patriotically. And nobody on the other side was killed. Ashley Babbitt
On
was
the
shot
other
by an
side.
out-of-control police officer that should have never, ever shot her. It's a disgrace. But we didn't do this group of people that have been treated so badly. I ask, what about all the people that are pouring into our country and killing people that she allowed to pour in? She was the border czar, remember that. She was the border czar. She doesn't want to be called the border czar.
Why are you
because she's
shaking your head?
embarrassed by
No,
the border.
that
In
is
fact, she said
correct.
at the beginning,
I'm
oh,
not
I'm
the
surprised you're
border
not
czar.
talking about the border yet. That's because
the border
she knows
prime
what a bad
minister.
job they've done. What about those people?
Hope she
When are
connects
they gonna be
9/11 to
prosecuted?
January 6th
When
again.
are these
Oh,
people
that'd be a
from
big one.
countries all over the world,
Especially
not
day
just
before.
South America? They're coming in from all over
shit, yeah.
the world, David. All over the world. And crime rates are down all
gotta-
over the world because of
You
it.
gotta
When
get
are-
off the
when are those-
immigration thing.
David,
Talk
when
about
are
the
those
people who've
gonna
been
be
in jail for
prosecuted? When are
3
the
years
people
without
that burned down
trial.
Minneapolis going to be prosecuted, or in Seattle? They went into Seattle. They took over a big percentage of the city of Seattle. When are those people going to be prosecuted?
But let me just ask
You might ask her that
You
question.
were the president. You were watching it unfold on television. It's a very simple question as we move forward toward another election. Is there anything you regret about what you did on that day? Yes or no?
I had nothing to do with that other than they asked me to make a speech. I showed up for a speech. I said, I think it's going to be big. I went to Nancy
I think it's
Pelosi
gonna
and the
be
mayor
big.
of Washington, D.C., and the mayor put it back in writing, as you know. I said, you know,
boy,
this
was
is
he
going to be
right.
a very
It was like
big
Woodstock.
rally or whatever you want to call it. And again, it wasn't done by me. It was done by others. I said, I'd like to give you 10,000 National Guard or soldiers. They rejected me. Nancy Pelosi rejected me. It was just 2 weeks ago. Her daughter has a tape of her saying she is fully responsible for what happened. They want to get rid of that tape. It would have never happened if Nancy Pelosi and the mayor of Washington did their jobs. I wasn't responsible for security. Nancy Pelosi was responsible. She didn't do her job.
The question was about you as president, not about former Speaker Pelosi.
And
but I
they're
do want
not
Vice
going to, they
President
want
Harris to respond.
soundbite.
I was at the Capitol on January 6th. I was the vice president-elect. I was also
was
an acting
terrified.
senator. I was there. And on
I was
that
held
day,
at gunpoint.
the
No, you
President of the
weren't.
United States incited a violent mob.
I was there.
Yeah, since when was Kamala there? I have never
our
heard
nation's
that.
capital.
She wasn't. She was at
To
the DNC.
desecrate our nation's capital.
Was it
On
in
that
DC?
day, 140
Yeah, it
I
was
was
in
there
DC.
on the
officers were
on
injured.
Earth.
And some died. And understand, the former president has been indicted and impeached for exactly
Spent
that
on
reason.
that day. That
But
day.
this is not an isolated situation. Let's remember Charlottesville, where
Oh,
there was
Why are we
a
still
mob of
talking
people
about
carrying
Charlottesville?
torches, spewing anti-Semitic hate. And what did the president then at the time say? There were fine people on each
How
side.
many times has this
Let's
been?
Oh
remember
my God.
that when it came to the Proud Boys, a militia,
A
the
militia.
president said, the former president said, stand back and stand by. So for everyone watching who remembers what January 6th was, I say we don't have to go back. Let's not go back. We're not going back. It's time to turn the page. And if that was a bridge too far for you, well, there is a place in our campaign for you to stand for country, to stand for our democracy, to stand for rule of law.
I don't
And
like
to
your
end the
democracy.
chaos, and to end the approach that is about attacking the foundations of our democracy because you don't like the outcome. And be clear,
agree, Marcus.
on that point, Donald Trump, the candidate, has said in this election there will be a bloodbath. If this and the outcome of this election...
Wasn't he the one who got
These are
shot?
all lies.
Let's turn the page on this. Let's not go back. Let's chart a course for the future and not go backwards to the past.
Let me just follow up here.
It was a different term, and it was a term that related to energy because they have destroyed our energy business. That was where Bloodbath was. Also, on Charlottesville, that story has been, as you would say, debunked. Laura Ingraham, Sean Hannity, Jesse, all
Yeah,
of
the
these
moderators
people,
didn't say
they
shit about
covered
that.
Yeah, that's
if they
fucked
go
up.
An extra sentence, they will see it was perfect.
Just an actual
It was
blatant
debunked
lie.
in almost
Like,
every
just
newspaper,
like rail
but
him.
they
Go.
still
You're gonna
bring it up,
fact
just
check
like they
me
bring
on shit, and you're not gonna
2025
call any
Yeah,
of that a lie.
exactly.
Yeah.
I ask you this. You talk about the Capitol. Why are we allowing these millions of people to
annoying.
come
This
through
is
on the
nothing to
southern
do with
border? How come she's
anything-
not doing anything?
any
And
sort
I'll
of
tell you what I
politics
would
that
do,
would fucking
and I would
help
be very
anyone.
proud to do it. I would say we would both leave this debate right now. I'd like to see her go down to Washington, D.C. during this debate because we're wasting a lot of time. Go down to, because she's been so bad, it's so ridiculous. Go down to Washington, D.C. and let her sign a bill to close up the border because they have the right to do it. They don't need bills. They have the right to do it. The President of the United States, get him out of bed. You'll wake him up at
Uninstall
4 o'clock
your
in the
fucking
afternoon and say,
trash.
Come on down to the office. Let's sign a bill. If he signs a bill that the border is closed, all he has to do is say it to the Border Patrol, who are phenomenal. If they do that, the border is closed.
Mr.
Those
President,
people are killing many people, unlike J6.
We talked immigration here tonight. I do want to focus on this next issue to both of you because it really brings us this into focus. Truth in these times that we're living in.
Truth Social.
Mr. President, for 3.5 years after you lost the 2020 election, you repeatedly falsely claimed that you won, many times saying you won in a landslide. In the past couple of weeks leading up to this debate, you have said, quote, you lost by a whisker, that you, quote, didn't quite make it, that you came up a little bit short.
I said that?
Are you now acknowowing that you lost in 2020?
No, I don't acknowledge that at all.
But
I
you
said
did
that
say that.
sarcastically.
But
You know
those-
that. It was said, oh, we lost by a whisker. That was said sarcastically. Look, there's so
Whiskers.
much proof. All
Meow.
you have to do is look at it, and they should have sent it back to the legislatures for approval. I got almost 75
actually so
million
important
votes,
for
the
his-
most
for
votes
his
any
lawsuit
sitting
case.
president has ever gotten.
They were
I
trying
was
to
told
goad
that
him
I got
into that.
63, which was what I got in 2016. You can't be beaten. The election, people should never be thinking about an election as fraudulent. We need two things. We need walls, and we have to have it. We have to have borders, and we have to have good elections. Our elections are bad. And a lot of these illegal immigrants coming in, they're trying to get them to vote. They can't even speak English. They don't even know what country they're in practically. And these people are trying to get them to vote. And that's why they're allowing them to come into our country.
I did watch all of these pieces of video. I didn't detect the
Pieces of
sarcasm,
video.
lost by a whisker. We didn't quite make it. And we should just point out here as clarification, and you know this, you and your allies, 60 cases in front of many judges, many of them
No
Republican.
judge looked at it.
And said
They
there was
said
no
we didn't have
widespread fraud.
standing. That's the other thing. They said we didn't have standing, a technicality. Can you imagine a system where a person in an election doesn't have standing? The president of the United States
He's
doesn't
literally
have
debating the
standing.
moderators.
That's
Yeah,
how we
that's
lost.
crazy.
If you look at the facts, and I'd love to have you.
I can't
do a
believe
special on
CNN
it.
was actually,
I'll show
like,
you Georgia,
pretty
and
moderate
I'll
when it
show
came to
you
this shit.
Wisconsin, and I'll show you Pennsylvania, and I'll show you. We have so many facts and statistics, but you know what? That doesn't matter because we have to solve the problem that we have right now. That's old news. And the problem that we have right now is we have a nation in decline, and they have put it into decline. We have a nation that is dying, David.
Mr. President, thank you. Vice President Harris, you heard the
You're
president there
welcome.
tonight. He said he lost by whiskers. He still believes he did not lose the election that was won by President Biden and yourself. But I do want to ask you about something
Well,
that's
not
come
by
up the last
you,
couple of
because
days. This
you
was a
didn't get
post
a single
from
delegate.
President Trump
Nope.
about this
Dropped
upcoming
out for
election
the first
just weeks away. He
contest.
said, when I win, those people who cheated, and then he lists donors, voters, election officials, he says will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law, which will include long-term prison sentences. One of your campaign's top lawyers responded saying, we won't let Donald Trump intimidate us. We won't let him suppress the vote. Is that what you believe he's trying to do here?
Donald
What
Trump was
question is that?
fired by 81 million people. So let's be clear about that.
Good
And
line, Kamala.
clearly
Keep 'em
he's having
coming.
a very difficult time processing that.
Let me be queer.
But we cannot afford to have a president of the United States who attempts, as he did in the past, to upend the will of the voters in a free and fair election. And I'm going to tell you that I have traveled the world as Vice President of the United States.
It was beautiful.
And world leaders are laughing at Donald Trump. I have talked with military leaders, some of whom worked with you, and they say you're a disgrace. And when you then talk in this way
That
in
wasn't
a
very
presidential
nice.
debate and deny what over and over again are court cases you have lost because you did, in fact, lose that election, it leads one to believe that perhaps we do not have in the candidate to my right the temperament or the ability to not be confused about fact. That's deeply troubling, and the American people deserve better.
I'll give you 1 minute to respond, Mr. President.
Let me just say about world leaders.
My
Viktor
name, Jeff.
Orban, one of the most respected men. They call him a strong man. He's a tough person, smart. Prime Minister of Hungary. They said, why is the whole world blowing up? 3 years ago it wasn't. Why is it blowing up? He said, because you need Trump back as president. They were afraid of him. China was afraid, and I don't like to use the word afraid, but I'm just quoting him. China was afraid of him. North Korea was afraid of him. Look at what's going on with North Korea, by the way. He said Russia was afraid of him. I ended the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, and Biden put it back on day one, but he ended the XL pipeline. The XL pipeline in our country, he ended that. But he let the Russians build a pipeline going all over Europe and heading into Germany, the biggest pipeline in the world. Look, Viktor Orban said it. He said the most respected, most feared person is Donald Trump. We had no problems when Trump was president, but when this weak, pathetic man that you saw at a debate just a few months ago, that if he weren't in that debate, he'd be running instead of her. She got no votes. He got 14 million votes. What you did, you talk about a threat to democracy. He got 14 million votes, and they threw him out of office. And you know what? I'll give you a little secret. He hates her. He can't stand her.
Shit!
No. 14 million
They're
votes.
breaking up the
They threw
band.
him out. She got 0 votes. And when she
Creative
ran,
differences.
She was the first one to leave because she failed. And now she's running. I don't understand it, but
Mr.
I'm
President,
okay with it
Mr.
because
President, your time is
I think
up.
we're
Thank
going to
you.
do very well.
We've got a lot more to get to.
Turning now
Yes.
to the Israel
He was kinda cooking there.
war
I
and
liked that
hostages
part.
who are still being held, Americans among them. Vice President Harris, in December, you said, quote, Israel has a right to defend itself, but you added, quote, it matters how.
Who is that?
Saying international
That's
humanitarian
the small
law
head
must
guy
be
from
respected.
Beetlejuice.
Israel must do more to protect innocent civilians.
Prince Reborn.
You said that 9 months ago.
Prince.
Now an estimated 40,000
Blouse.
Palestinians are dead. Nearly 100 hostages remain. Just last week, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said there's not a deal in the making. President Biden has not been able to break through the stalemate. How would you do it?
Well, let's understand how we got here. On October 7, Hamas, a terrorist organization,
Oh dear.
slaughtered
Oh, Trump's
1,200
going to be
Israelis.
real bad on this.
Many of them young people
he
who
is.
were simply attending a concert.
They'll somehow tie it back to
Women were
immigration. Don't worry.
horribly
Yeah.
raped. And so
The
absolutely,
Haitians.
I said then, I say now, Israel has a right to defend itself.
Dogs
We
are
would.
not for dinner.
And how it does so matters. Because it is also true, far too many innocent Palestinians have been killed. Children, mothers. What we know is that this war must end. It must end immediately, and the way it will end is we need a ceasefire deal and we need the hostages out. And so we will continue to work around the clock
They
on that.
kill the hostages?
Work around the clock, also understanding that we must chart a course for a
Yeah.
two-state solution. And in that solution, there must be security for the Israeli people and Israel, and in equal measure for the Palestinians. But the one thing I will assure you always, I will always give Israel the ability to defend itself, in particular as it relates to Iran and any threat that Iran
Holy
and its
shit, this is
proxies
some word
pose
vomit.
to Israel.
Yeah, it is.
But we must have a two-state solution where we can rebuild Gaza, where the Palestinians have security, self-determination, and the dignity they so rightly deserve.
President
wasn't the
Trump,
worst
how would
answer
you
I've ever heard from her,
negotiate with Netanyahu
No, I
and
mean, it
also
means
Hamas in
nothing.
order to
Yeah,
end
yeah,
it was a whole lot of
and
nothing.
prevent the killing
Yeah.
of more innocent civilians in
But it
Gaza?
could get a lot
Everybody,
worse.
everybody can get along.
Yeah,
I were
everyone, let's
president,
let's
Russia
let's
would have
build up
never,
Palestine.
ever-
Let's
I know
have
Putin very
Israel
well. He
protect
would have
itself,
never- there was
and
no
that's how
threat
we
of it either,
win.
by the way, for 4 years.
The
Have gone
end.
into Ukraine.
I put a
and
coexist
killed
sticker on the
millions of
back
people.
of Trump
When you
Force
add it up,
One.
far worse than people understand what's going on over there. But when she mentions about Israel, all of a sudden, she hates
keep
Israel.
finding, I don't
She
know
wouldn't
why. I
even
have a
meet
sticker, they can
with
see it.
Netanyahu when he went
I
to
say,
Congress
"Please,
to make
people."
a very important speech. She refused to be there because she was at a sorority party of hers. She wanted to go to the sorority party. She hates
was at
Israel. If she's
AGD. I
president,
don't know
I
why she
believe
would go
that
to
Israel
Alpha
will
Gamma
not
Delta.
exist within 2 years from now. And I've been pretty good at predictions, and I hope I'm wrong about that one. She hates Israel. At the same time, in her own way, she hates the Arab population because the whole place is going to get blown up. Arabs, Jewish people, Israel will be gone. It would have never
What?
happened. Iran was broke under Donald Trump.
You heard it
now
here first,
Iran has
folks.
$300 billion because they took off all the sanctions that I had. Iran
Dusty
had no
Divot
money
is
for
coming back.
Hamas or Hezbollah or any of the 28 different spheres of terror, and they are spheres of terror, horrible terror. They had no money.
Terror.
It was a big.
We're gonna
story.
terraform
You
Mars.
covered it very well, actually. They had no money for terror.
We're gonna
They were
put
broke.
Trump Tower.
Now they're a rich nation, and now what they're doing is they're spreading that money around. Look at what's happening with the Houthis and Yemen. Look at what's going on in
And the
Middle East.
blowfish.
This would have never happened. I will get that settled and
That
fast.
was a good one. I'm
Ukraine
stoking that one in.
ended. President-elect. I'll get it done before even becoming president.
Vice President Harris, he says you hate Israel.
That's absolutely not true. I have
Nuh-uh.
my entire career in life supported Israel.
What do you mean, nuh-uh? Oh, yeah, let's take a
Knows
moment
that
of silence
he's
for
trying to, again, divide
James Earl Jones,
and,
the GOAT.
and distract from the reality, which is it is very well known
Thank you for your silence.
that Donald Trump is weak and wrong on national security and foreign policy. It is well known that he
I'm not weak.
admires
Get in the
dictators,
WWE ring.
wants
I'll
to be
show
a
you.
dictator on day one, according to himself. It is
match,
well
really?
known
Yeah, not just a
that
lie.
he said of Putin that he
Well, I'm
can
Putin,
do
all right.
whatever the hell he wants and go into Ukraine. It is well known that he said when Russia went
Really,
into
that's why
Ukraine,
Putin supports
it was
you?
brilliant. It is well known he exchanged love letters with Kim Jong-un. And it is absolutely
Love letters?
well known
Can I
that
see
these
these?
dictators
He was
and
talking about a
autocrats are
different
rooting
kind of Rocket
for you
Man.
to be
Shades of
president
gray.
again because they're so clear.
Ooh,
They
Rocket
can
Man.
manipulate you with flattery and favors.
It's true, you don't
And
have a
that
belly
is
button.
why so many military leaders who you
Or is
have
it a
worked
butthole?
with have told me you are
doesn't have a
disgrace.
butthole.
Oh, yeah.
That is why
I was thinking of
we
Adam and Eve.
understand that we have to have a president who is not consistently weak and
Tom
wrong
said
on
Red
national
Rocket.
security, including the importance of upholding and respecting in highest regard our military.
Well, Kim,
Vice
since you
President
don't have a
Harris, thank
butthole,
you.
looks like you're gonna be top.
And she's the one
All right, I'm done.
that caused it. That's weak on national security by allowing every nation last month for the year, 168 different countries sending people into our country. Their crime rates are way down. Putin endorsed her last week, said, I hope she wins. And I think he meant it because what he's gotten away with is absolutely incredible. It wouldn't have happened with me. The leaders of other countries think that they're weak and incompetent, and they are. They're grossly incompetent. And I just ask one question. Why does Biden go in and kill the Keystone
Biden not
Pipeline
love me?
and approve the single biggest deal that Russia's ever made, Nord Stream 2, the biggest pipeline anywhere in the world going to Germany and all over Europe? Because they're weak and they're ineffective. And Biden, by the way,
President
gets paid
Trump,
a lot of money.
Thank you. We have a lot of issues to get to.
We'll be right back with much more of this.
We'll be right back.
ABC News presidential debate from the National Constitution Center.
I have to
here
put
in
more hair
Philadelphia.
gel in.
Back in a moment.
Presidential debate will continue after this.
Wait, what?
What?
Trump pushes baseless claim about immigrants eating the pets.
What? Speed run?
What is this?
Speed run.
Why did they?
This is the AI.
This is the AI. the AI YouTube channel that pushes out random content.
Yeah. I don't see any MLA citations on there.
Dude, yeah.
Hold on, wait.
Yeah, they just straight up just
Commercial
like
break
presented
is gonna be, like,
information.
Trump? No way.
Fuck these people.
Yeah, and you're not gonna say anything about the fine people on both sides.
What?
Oh my god.
What a fucking dichotomy these headlines are right here.
Yeah. My only takeaway so far from this is that I hope we get a part 2 to like the Chinese song that they made the Biden and Trump sing, but with Kamala and Trump.
Oh yeah.
That's scary. That's like actual brainwash. Like right during the commercial break, they just have all this shit.
That
Believe us, believe us.
What is the thing on the right? Are those all fact checks?
I guess so.
Yeah, I see them. Fact checked. Who is responsible for the botched troop exit from Afghanistan?
Oh my god.
Joe Biden.
Propaganda bullshit.
Trump says Harris wants to do transgender operations on illegal immigrants, on illegal aliens.
That did happen.
That did happen.
Trump says inflation is
Fact
probably
check
the worst
that.
learning. This is all Trump like nothing on Kamala Harris.
Yeah.
That's
Right.
crazy.
Wait, are these
Because
all
she's
linked to just
infallible.
articles on NBC?
Yeah.
Right.
They're all
Oh, they're
NBC News
presenting it as like, oh, this is where we got it, like the source.
Right.
And
They're just and then telling people to eat their own shit.
yeah.
Go.
Wild.
I think Trump and Kamala will have a better. I mean, Trump and Biden's Chinese song was really good, but I think the harmonies might be better with a female singer.
I don't know. I think Donald can hit those notes.
Shinzo, Indo.
This is the weirdest mix of just
Yeah, why am I-
random
why do I have
garbage mixed with propaganda
tampons?
ever.
I know. Like what? What is this? They'd be better off putting like GoDaddy commercials in here. I don't know.
Oh god.
Iranian-born
She
scientist.
was a cold-blooded
Yeah.
killer.
Iranian-born scientist knows where you live.
All 12 pixels of her.
Oh, very nice. Very
Dragons have
pretty.
invaded Ukrainian airspace.
Ladies and gentlemen, there's been a national tragedy. Dragons have invaded Ukrainian airspace.
Not Tyrese.
No!
The only thing they can do to salvage this commercial break is put an Antonio Brown quote up there.
Yeah. Hashtag CTESPN. It's crazy how good his tweets are, dude. He makes me laugh so fucking hard.
Antonio Brown live tweeting is hilarious.
No, he really is the new Trump of tweets. Like, all of
Oh,
them
good.
are bangers.
It's all right. We're back at the top.
We're back at the top. What, with him back on Twitter?
No, with they just
Former
went back
President
to
Donald Trump.
His latest tweet is Ronald McDonald saying, "Stop calling. The bitch never worked here."
Hunter Biden watching the debate. It's Elmo snorting cocaine.
Okay, are we back?
That's for an analysis of tonight's key moments. Our team will break down how it could shake up the final sprint.
Gritting my teeth
to
so
Election
bad.
Day. For now, though, let's go back to
Guy on the
debate
left
live
looks
in
fucking
Philadelphia.
angry as hell.
Live from the National Constitution Center
What's your
in
hold?
Philadelphia, Pennsylvania.
They fired me, and then I found my way back here.
Lindsay Davis.
Welcome back to this
Die,
historic
Emma
I
Weasel.
lied too
presidential
much.
debate tonight. We're going to continue here, and I want to turn to the war in Ukraine. We're now 2.5 years
about my favorite
into this conflict.
Antonio
Mr.
Brown
President,
tweet
it has
of the
been
day.
the position of the Biden administration that we must defend Ukraine from Russia, from Vladimir Putin, to defend their sovereignty, their democracy, that it's in America's best interest to do so, arguing that if Putin
Why?
wins, he may be emboldened to move even further into other countries. You have said you would solve this war in 24 hours. You said so just before the break tonight. How exactly would you do that? And I want to ask you a very simple question tonight. Do you want Ukraine to win this war?
I want the war to stop.
Good
I want to
answer.
save lives. that are being uselessly,
perfect answer so
people
far.
being killed by the millions. It's the millions. It's so much worse than the numbers that you're getting, which are fake numbers. Look, we're in for 250 billion or more because they don't ask Europe, which is a much bigger beneficiary to getting this thing done than we are.
Yeah.
They're in for $150 billion less because Biden and you don't have the courage to ask Europe like I did with NATO. They paid billions and billions, hundreds of billions of dollars when I said, either you pay up or we're not going to protect you anymore. So that's maybe one of the reasons they don't like me as much as they like weak people. But you take a look at what's happening. We're in for 250 to 275 billion. They're into 100 to 150. They should be forced to equalize. With that being said, I want to get the war settled.
Just like
I know
Denzel.
Zelensky very well, and I know Putin very well. I have a good relationship, and they respect your president, okay? They respect me. They don't respect Biden. How would you respect him? Why? For what reason? He hasn't even made a phone call in 2 years to Putin, hasn't spoken to anybody. They don't even try and get it. That is a war that's dying to be settled. I will get it settled before I even become president. If I win, when I'm president-elect, and what I'll do is I'll speak to one, I'll speak to the other, I'll get them together. That war would have never happened. And in fact, when I saw Putin after I left, unfortunately left because our country has gone to hell. But after I left, when I saw him building up soldiers, he did it after I left, I said, oh, he must be negotiating. It must be a good, strong point of negotiation. Well, it wasn't, because Biden had no idea how to talk to him. He had no idea how to stop it. And now you have millions of people dead, and it's only getting worse, and it could lead to World War III. Don't kid yourself, David. We're playing with World War III, and we have a president that we don't even know if he's... Where is our president? We don't even know if he's a president.
And just to clarify
They
here,
threw him out of a campaign like a dog. We don't even know. Is he a
Good,
president?
good,
We have a
Anakin.
president,
Mr. President.
that doesn't know he's alive.
your time is up. Just to clarify in the question,
don't even
do you
know
believe
if
it's in the
he's
U.S.
alive.
best interest for Ukraine to win this war, yes or no?
I think it's the U.S. best
you
interest
said
to get
we
this
have a
war
president
finished
who
and
doesn't
just
know
get it
he's
done.
alive.
Negotiate a deal, because we have to stop all of these human lives from being destroyed.
I want to take this to Vice President Harris. I want to get your thoughts on support for Ukraine in this moment, but also as Commander-in-Chief, if elected, how would you deal with Vladimir Putin, and would it be any different from what we're seeing from President Biden?
Well, first of all, it's important to remind the former president you're not running against Joe Biden, you're running against me.
Bang!
I believe the reason that
I'm
Donald Trump says
speaking.
that this war would be over within 24 hours is because he would just give it up.
I'm sorry, aren't you in this
And that's not
administration?
who we are as Americans. Let's understand what happened here. I actually met with Zelensky a few days before Russia invaded, tried through force to change territorial boundaries, to defy one of the most important international rules and norms, which is the importance of sovereignty and territorial integrity. And I met with President Zelensky. I shared with him American intelligence about how he could defend himself. Days later, I went to NATO's eastern flank, to Poland and Romania. And through the work that I and others did, we brought 50 countries together to support Ukraine in its righteous defense. And
And they're
because
losing.
of our support, because of the air defense, the ammunition, the artillery, the javelins, the Abrams tanks that we have provided, Ukraine stands
They're
as
now
an
selling.
independent and free country. If Donald Trump were president, Putin would be sitting in Kyiv right now. And understand what that would mean, because Putin's agenda is not just about Ukraine. Understand why the European allies and our NATO allies are so thankful that you are no longer president, and that we understand the importance of the greatest military alliance the world has ever known, which is NATO, and what we have done to preserve the ability of Zelensky and the Ukrainians to fight for their independence. Otherwise, Putin would be sitting in Kyiv with his eyes on the rest of Europe, starting with Poland. And why don't you tell the 800,000 Polish Americans right here in Pennsylvania how quickly you would give up for the sake of favor and what you think is a friendship with what is known to be a dictator who would eat you for lunch.
Vice President Harris,
Wasn't
thank
he,
you.
like,
I've heard from both of you.
around for, like,
Tonight,
4 years?
Afghanistan came up in the last hour. I wanted her to respond to something you said earlier, and please, I'll give you a minute here.
Putin would be sitting in Moscow, and he wouldn't have lost 300,000 men and women, but he would have been sitting in Moscow. Quiet, please. He would have been sitting in Moscow, much happier than he is right now. But eventually, you know, he's got a thing that other people don't have. He's got nuclear weapons. They don't ever talk about that. He's got nuclear weapons. Nobody ever thinks about that. And eventually, maybe he'll use them, and maybe he hasn't been that threatening. But he does have that, something we don't even like to talk about. Nobody likes to talk about it. But just so you understand, they sent her to negotiate peace before this war started. 3 days later, he went in and he started the war because everything they said was weak and stupid. They said the wrong things.
Bang.
That war should have never started. She was the
Started.
emissary. They sent her in to negotiate with Zelensky and Putin, and she did. And the war started 3 days later. And that's the kind of talent we have with her. She's worse than Biden. In my opinion, I think he's the worst president in the history of our country. She goes down as the worst vice president in the history of our country. But let me tell you something. She is a horrible negotiator. They sent her in to negotiate. As soon as they left, Putin did the invasion.
President Trump, thank you. You did bring up something. You said she went to negotiate with Vladimir Putin. Vice President Harris, have you ever met Vladimir Putin? Can you clarify tonight?
Yet again, I said it at the beginning of this debate, you're going to hear a bunch of lies coming from this fellow. And that is another one. When I went to meet with President Zelensky, I've now met with him over 5 times. The reality is it has been about standing as America always should.
What?
As a leader
What?
upholding international rules and norms, as a leader who shows strength.
And by that we
understanding
mean
that the alliances
we
we
get
have
to
around
bomb
the
and
world
destroy
are
things.
dependent
She also
on
just
our ability to
completely
look out for
evaded
our
that
friends
question.
and
Yeah.
not favor our enemies because you adore strongmen instead of caring about democracy. And that is very much what is at stake here. The President of the United States is Commander-in-Chief, and the American people have a right to rely on a president who understands the significance of America's role and responsibility in terms of ensuring that there is stability and ensuring we stand up for our principles and not sell them for the benefit of personal flattery.
We've talked about Ukraine and Vladimir Putin. I do want to talk about Afghanistan. It came up in the first hour of this debate. I want to move on to Afghanistan.
Stoltenberg said Trump did the most amazing thing I've ever seen. He got these countries, the 28 countries at the time, to pay up. He said, I've never seen, he's the head of NATO. He said, I've never seen. For years, we were paying almost all of NATO. We were being ripped off by European nations, both on trade and on NATO. I got them to pay up by saying one of the statements you made before, if you don't pay, we're not going to protect you.
President
Otherwise,
Trump.
we would have never gotten it. He said it was one of the most incredible jobs that he's ever seen done.
Thank you. I want to turn to Afghanistan. It came up in the first hour of the debate, and we witnessed a poignant moment today on Capitol Hill, honoring the soldiers who died in the chaotic withdrawal from Afghanistan. I do want to ask the Vice President, do you believe you bear any responsibility in the way that withdrawal played out?
Well, I will tell you, I agreed with President Biden's decision to pull out of Afghanistan. 4 presidents
was Trump's
said
decision.
Yeah,
they
it was
would,
Trump's
and Joe
decision.
Biden did. And as a result, America's taxpayers are not paying the $300 million a day we were paying for that endless war. And
No, we're
as
just
of
sending it to
today,
Ukraine
there
now.
is not one member of the United States military who is in active duty in a combat zone in any war zone around the world, the first time this century. But let's understand how we got
You're
to
just
where we
a
are.
li-
Donald Trump
That's
he was
just not
president,
how. That's
negotiated
not how that works.
one of the weakest deals you can imagine. He calls himself a deal maker. Even his national security advisor
The only
said
people
it
that
was
aren't
a weak,
active duty are the
terrible
National
deal. And
Guard
here's how it went
and
down.
like the reserves.
He bypassed the Afghan government. He negotiated directly with a terrorist organization called the Taliban. The negotiation
Who?
involved the Taliban getting 5,000 terrorists,
What is the
Taliban
Taliban?
terrorists released. And
Are
get
these
this,
scrappy
Which
freedom
one?
fighters?
and the president at the time invited the
Certainly
Taliban
it'll be
to
a good
Camp
idea to fund them.
David, a place of storied significance for us as Americans, a place where we honor the importance of American diplomacy,
You know
where
what?
we invite
She's
and
pulling
you're
on
receive
so amazing.
respected
She's
world
pulling on my
leaders.
heartstrings.
And
I'm changing
this
sides.
former president, as president, invited them to Camp David because he does not again appreciate the role and responsibility of the President of the United States to be commander-in-chief with a level of respect. And this gets back to the point of how he has consistently disparaged and demeaned members of our military, fallen soldiers, and the work that we must do to uphold the strength and the respect of the United States of America around the world.
Vice President Harris, thank you. President Trump, your response to her saying that you began the
They
negotiations
said
with the
nothing
Taliban.
about that.
So, if you
Yeah,
take a look at the period of
that's
time,
crazy.
the Taliban was killing our soldiers, a lot of them, with snipers. And I got
That's it?
involved with the Taliban
With snipers.
because the Taliban was doing the killing. That's the fighting force within Afghanistan. They don't bother doing that
I will
because,
give
they deal
every
with the wrong
army
people
man
all
a
the time.
DSR-50
But I got
with
involved.
Ballista.
And Abdul is the head of the Taliban. He is still the head of the Taliban. And I told Abdul, don't do it anymore. You do it anymore, you're going to have problems. And he said, why do you send me a picture of my house? I said, you're going to have to figure that out, Abdul. And for 18 months,
I said, Alshon, look out, it's a
nobody
missile.
killed. We did have
Alshon!
an agreement negotiated by Mike Pompeo. It was a very good agreement. The reason it was good, it was we were getting out. We would have been out faster than them, but we wouldn't have lost the soldiers. We wouldn't have left many Americans behind, and we wouldn't have left $85 billion worth of brand new, beautiful military equipment behind. And just to finish, they blew it. The agreement said you have to do this, and they didn't do it. They didn't do it.
this.
The agreement was terminated by us because they didn't do what they were supposed to do.
I want to move on.
And these people did the worst.
You
with
wanted
all.
to ask a
And
question,
in my
dipshit.
opinion, the most embarrassing moment in the history of our country. And by the way, that's why Russia attacked Ukraine, because they saw how incompetent she and her boss are.
President Trump, thank you. I want to move on now to race and politics in this country.
Calling
Mr.
Biden
President,
her
you
boss
recently
is
said of Vice
hilarious.
President
Oh,
Harris, quote,
God.
I didn't know she was black until a number of years ago when she happened to turn black, and now she wants to be known as black. I'm going to ask a bigger picture question here tonight. Why do you
I
believe
stand
it's
by it.
appropriate to weigh in on the racial identity of your opponent?
I don't, and I don't care. I don't care what she is. I don't care.
I like
Make
it.
a big
Me, I'm
deal out of
orange.
something. I couldn't care less. Whatever she wants to be is okay with me.
But those were your words,
Bars.
so I'm
I don't
asking-
know. I don't know.
Yep.
I mean, all I can say is I read where she was not black, that she put out, and I'll say that. And then I read that she was black, and that's okay. Either one was okay with me. That's up to her. That's up to her.
Vice President Harris, your thoughts
God,
on this?
this is gonna kill him.
Yeah.
I think it's, I mean, honestly, I think it's a tragedy that we have someone who wants to be president who has consistently, over the course of his career, attempted to use race to divide the American people. You know, I do believe that the vast majority of us know that we have so much more in common than what separates us, and we don't want
Oh
this kind of
God.
approach that is just constantly trying to divide us, and especially by race. And let's remember how Donald Trump started. He was land, he owned buildings, and he was investigated because he
Oh,
refused
fuck. She's
to rent
spinning out.
property to black families. Let's remember, this is the same individual who took out a full-page ad in the New York Times calling for the execution of 5 young black and Latino boys who were innocent, the Central Park 5. Took out a full-page ad calling for their execution. This is the same individual who spread
Shaking his head.
birther lies about the first
Trump's
black
like, yep, that
president
was
of the
me.
United States.
I don't see the problem.
And I think the American people want better than that, want better than this. Want
doesn't even
someone
sound
who
confident
understands,
in
as
her.
I do, I travel our country. We see in each other a friend. We see in each other a neighbor. We don't want a
kinda got
leader
eepy
who
eyes
is
right now.
constantly trying to have Americans point their
almost
fingers at each
bedtime.
other. I meet with people all the time who tell me Can we please just have discourse
We just can't take this
about
word vomit.
how
Neither
we're
can
going
I.
to invest in the aspirations and the ambitions and the dreams of the American people? Knowing that regardless of people's color or the language their grandmother speaks, we all have the same dreams and aspirations and want a president who invests in those, not in hate and division.
Vice President Harris, thank you. Lindsay?
President
running
Trump,
on
this is now your
multiplication.
third time.
This is the most divisive
I keep
presidency
forgetting that other moderators there.
in the history of our country. There's never been anything like
doesn't
it.
show up
They're
for 10
destroying
minutes
our
straight.
country, and they come up with things like what she just said. Going back many, many years, when a lot of people, including Mayor Bloomberg, agreed with me on the Central Park Five, they admitted, they said, they pled guilty. And I said, well, if they pled guilty, they badly hurt a person, killed a person ultimately. And if they pled guilty, then they pled, we're not guilty. But this is a person that has to stretch back years, 40, 50 years ago, because there's nothing now. I built one of the greatest economies in the history of the world, and I'm going to build it again. It's going to be
Back to
bigger,
the
better, and
economy.
stronger. But they're destroying our economy. They have no idea what a good economy is. Their oil policies.
It
Dude,
could be
like-
safe for like
And remember
black
this.
people and
She
Hispanics.
is Biden.
Say something.
She's trying to get away from Biden. I don't know the gentleman. She says
I just like
she is
you're,
Biden.
he was on the right track.
worst
They're the
inflation
administration
we've
of
ever
division.
had,
They called you a fucking
horrible
Nazi
economy
for 8
because
years.
Inflation has made it so bad.
Like, come
that
on,
you can't
dude.
get away with that.
Thank you. Your time is up, Lindsay.
I want to respond to that, though. I want to just respond briefly. Clearly, I am not Joe Biden, and I am
What?
certainly not Donald Trump.
This is news
And
to
what I
me.
do offer is a new generation of leadership for our country.
New generation.
One who
You're
believes
60.
in what is possible. One who brings a sense of optimism.
Newsflash, you're an
about what
old
we
lady.
Can do instead of always disparaging the American people. I believe in what we can do to strengthen our small businesses, which is why I have a plan. Let's talk about our plans and let's compare
would
the
love to
plans.
listen to your plans,
I have a
Kamala.
plan. To
I've been
give
waiting an hour and a
startup
half to hear a
businesses
plan.
Go on.
$50,000 tax deduction. To pursue their ambition,
How are we gonna
their
do that?
innovation, their ideas, their hard work. I have a plan, $6,000 for young families for the first
Remember
year
the
of
two
your
things
child's
I
life
mentioned an hour
to
and a half
help
ago?
you
Though
in the
that's
most
the
critical stage
plan.
of your child's development. I have a plan.
And how are we
that
gonna?
is
How
about
are we
allowing people to be
dividing
able to
that
pursue
6,000? What are we
what
doing?
has been fleeting in terms of the American dream by offering a help with down payment of $25,000 down payment assistance for first-time home buyers. That's the kind of conversation
Money
I believe,
printer, go
David,
Bird.
that people
She's the
really want
president.
tonight,
She's the president
as
that
opposed
first
to a
graders
conversation
ask,
that is
like during student
constantly
council,
about
who says
belittling
they'll give free
and
ice cream
name-calling.
to
Soda
everyone.
machines.
Let's turn the page
Vice
and
President
move
Harris,
forward.
thank you. Let's turn to policy.
President
Let's turn
Trump,
back
we
to
have
policy.
to move on. President Trump.
Let's turn to policy,
She has
please.
a plan to
Look at my
defund the
finger.
police. She has a plan to
Hold my
confiscate
finger.
everybody's gun.
President
She
Trump, you
has
do
a
have to
plan
move on
to
to
not
other
allow
issues.
fracking in Pennsylvania or anywhere else.
Okay. Thank
That's
you, Mr.
what her
President.
plan is until just recently.
I just need
Lindsay,
to
go ahead.
respond.
President
because,
Trump,
no, the
President
fucking
former
in
president has
Pennsylvania.
said
I'm
something
sorry.
twice that I need to respond
I'm
to.
not-
They're killing our. They're killing our
President
pets.
Trump,
They're eating them.
President Trump, this is now your third time running for president. You have long vowed to repeal and replace the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare. You have failed to accomplish that. You now say you're going to keep Obamacare, quote, unless we can do something much better.
back.
Last month, you said, quote, we're working on it. So tonight, 9 years after you first started running, do you have a plan, and can you tell us what it is?
Obamacare was lousy health care, always was. It's not very good today. And what I said, that if we come up with something, and we are working on things, we're going to do it and we're going to replace it. But remember this, I inherited Obamacare because Democrats wouldn't change it. They wouldn't vote for it. They were unanimous. They wouldn't vote to change it. If they would have done that, we would have had a much better plan than Obamacare. But the Democrats came up. They wouldn't vote for it. I had a choice to make when I was president. Do I save it and make it as good as it can be, never going to be great, or do I let it rot? And I felt I had an obligation, even
Let
though
it
politically
ride.
it would have been good to just let it rot
ride.
and let it go away. I
Everything
decided,
I'm
and
like-
I told my people, the top people, and they're very good people. I have a lot of good people in that administration. We read about the bad ones. We had some real bad ones too, and so do they. They have really bad ones. The difference is they don't get rid of them. But let me just explain. I had a choice.
He
to
got
make.
himself back
Do I
on
save
track.
it and make it as good as it can be, or do I let it rot?
Ratatouille in his head
And I
pulled the
saved
other
it.
way.
I did the right thing. But it's still never going to be great, and it's too expensive for people. And what we will do is we're looking at different plans. If we can come up with a plan that's going to cost our people, our population, less money and be better health care than Obamacare, then I would absolutely do it. But until then, I'd run it as good as it can be run.
So just a yes or no, you still do not have a plan?
I have concepts of a plan. I'm not president right now. But if we come up with something, I would only change it if we come up with something that's better and less expensive. And there are concepts and options we have to do that. And you'll be hearing about it in the not too distant future.
Vice President Harris, in 2017, you supported Bernie Sanders' proposal to do away with private insurance and create a government-run healthcare system.
Oh,
2 years later, you proposed a plan that included a private insurance option. What is your plan today?
Well, first of all, I absolutely
French fries
support, and
for
over the
everyone.
last 4 years as vice president, private health care options. But what we need to do is maintain and grow the Affordable Care Act. But I'll get to that, Lindsay. I just need to respond to a previous point that the former president has made. I've made very clear my position on fracking. And then this business about taking everyone's guns away. Tim Walz and I are both gun owners. We're not taking anybody's guns away. So stop with the continuous lying about this stuff.
Shut
As it
the
relates to the
fuck
Affordable
up.
Care Act, understand, just look at the history to know where people
He owns a
stand.
semi-full
When
automatic
Donald Trump
water
was
gun.
president, 60 times
It's
he
no for
tried to get rid
nothing.
of the Affordable Care Act. 60 times. I was a senator at the time when I will never forget the early morning hours when it was up for a vote in the United States Senate. And the late, great John McCain, who you have disparaged
God.
as being, you don't like him, you said at the time, because he got caught. He was an American
Yeah, that's
hero.
true.
The late, great John McCain, I will never forget that night, walked onto the Senate floor and said, no, you don't. No, you don't. No, you don't get rid of the Affordable Care Act. You have no plan. And what the Affordable Care Act has done is eliminate the ability of insurance companies to deny people with pre-existing conditions. I don't have to tell the people watching tonight, you remember what that was like? Remember when an insurance company could deny if a child had asthma, if someone was a breast cancer survivor, if a grandparent had diabetes? And thankfully, as I've been vice president, and
pulling
we
at my
over the last
heartstrings
4
again.
years have strengthened the Affordable Care Act. We have allowed for the first time Medicare to negotiate drug prices on behalf of you, the American people. Donald Trump said he was going to allow Medicare to negotiate drug prices. He never did. We did. And now we have capped the cost of insulin at $35 a month. Since I've been vice president, we have capped the cost of prescription medication for seniors at $2,000 a year. And when I am president, we will do that for all people, understanding that the value I bring to this is that access
Is
to
by
health
taking
care
more of your
should
money.
be a right and not just a privilege of those who
throwing it
can
on black.
afford it. And the plan has to be to strengthen the Affordable Care Act, not get rid of it.
Vice
Past is
President
prologue
Harris,
in
thank
terms
you.
of where Donald Trump stands on that.
I want to move to an issue that's important for a
You
lot
made a
of
mistake. Number one, John McCain fought Obamacare for 10 years. But it wasn't only him. It were all of the Democrats that kept it going. And you know what? We can do much better than Obamacare, much less money. But she won't improve private insurance for people, private medical insurance. That's another thing she doesn't want to get.
President
People
Trump-
are paying privately for insurance that have worked hard and made money, and they want to have private. She wants everybody to be on government insurance where you wait 6 months for an operation that you need immediately.
President Trump,
Yeah.
thank you. We have another issue that we'd like to get to that's important for a number of Americans, in particular younger voters, and that's climate change. President Trump, with regard to
Oh,
the United States,
yes.
we have to have clean air and clean water. Vice President Harris, you call climate change an existential threat. The question to you both tonight is, what would you do to fight climate change? And Vice President Harris, we'll start with you. 1 minute for
I
you
will
each.
ban fracking. I
Well,
mean,
the
shit, fuck.
former president had said that climate change is a hoax.
Cut that.
And what we know is that it is very
We'll have
real. You
hands
ask
of
anyone
fresh
who
air,
lives in a state
like
who
in
has
Spaceballs.
experienced
O'Hare
these
air.
extreme weather occurrences, who now is either being denied home
Lorax.
insurance or it's being
This
jacked
former
up.
president
You ask
disgraced
anybody who
the
has
air that
been,
we breathe.
The victim of what that means in terms of losing their home, having nowhere to go. We know that we can actually deal with this issue. The young people of America care deeply about this issue. And I am proud that as Vice President over the
Especially
last
the
4
ones
years,
on
we have invested
SSRIs.
$1 trillion in a clean energy economy, while we have also increased domestic gas production to historic levels. We have created over 800,000 new manufacturing jobs while I have been Vice President. We have invested in clean energy to the point that we are opening up factories around the world. Donald Trump said he was going to create manufacturing jobs. He lost manufacturing jobs. And I'm also proud to have the endorsement of the United Auto Workers and Sean Fain, who also know that part of building a clean energy economy includes investing in American-made products, American automobiles. It includes growing what we can do around American manufacturing and opening up auto plants.
So you
not
support
closing
Elon
them
Musk?
like happened under Donald Trump.
Vice President Harris, thank you.
That didn't happen under Donald Trump. Let me just tell you, they lost
In
10,000
the third
manufacturing jobs this last month. It's going, they're all leaving. They're building big auto plants in Mexico, in many cases owned by China. They're building these massive plants, and they think they're going to sell their cars into the United States because of these people. What they have given to China is unbelievable. But we're not going to let that. We'll put tariffs on those cars so they can't come into our country, because they will kill the United Auto Workers and any auto worker, whether it's in Detroit or South Carolina or any other place. What they've done to business and manufacturing in this country is horrible. We have nothing because they refuse. You know, Biden doesn't go after people because supposedly China paid him millions of dollars. He's afraid to do it. Between him and his son, they get all this money from Ukraine. They get all this money from all of these different countries. And then you wonder, why is he so loyal to this one, that one, Ukraine, China? Why is he? Why did he get $3.5 million from the mayor of Moscow's wife? Why did she pay him $3.5 million? This is a crooked administration, and they're selling our country down the tubes.
President Trump, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll be right back with closing statements from both of our candidates. An historic night, this ABC News presidential debate from Philadelphia. Back in a moment.
I'm gonna get a ginger ale while we wait.
The
All right.
ABC News
Bets on what the
presidential
first headline's
debate
gonna be
will
on this
continue
commercial break.
after this.
President
Trump is a Nazi.
No.
Eating the.
Jesus.
They're eating the pets, all of them, cooking them up, tossing them in the oven.
You know how that got?
350 degrees for 40 minutes.
They're making beagle flambe. I said you can't do that.
Folks, they said they were bringing back round-based zombies. Looks a lot like Cold War zombies to me. Pack-a-punch. I said, what is this? What is this?
Warzone is ruining zombies. Get rid of Warzone. Once we get rid of Warzone, zombies will be great again.
They brought back the Cold War Pack-a-punch. They said, there's no risk. Here's a little reward.
I mean, it's great that they don't even try to be bipartisan.
It is rather funny at times.
Yeah, they're not even like hiding it.
Yeah.
And this Heisenberg, he says he's got blue meth. Get that man to vote. Sounds like he's got another 20 years in Congress.
These are closing statements, right?
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Under Trump, we will bring back Black Ops 3 zombies. We'll make sure the Steam Workshop works on it.
Gobblegums will be back.
And the Primus
My
crew
favorite is
will
Purple
return.
Holic. Grimace crew will return.
The mods will be fantastic.
These Black Ops 3 mods, have you seen them? They've got Donald Trump's Wall of Doom.
Is that an ad for something?
Thank you,
We're gonna
Mr. Trump.
reduce the hits back to 2 hits. The Democrats, they want to make baby zombies.
They want to add armor. They want
And
to
armor and salvage.
We will make 2-hit kills.
The Democrats, they want armor satchels. No one wants that. They say they want starting loadouts. I don't want starting loadouts.
Everybody wants pink guns. I don't know why they want to put stickers on their guns and get purple, pink unicorn guns. You get one color. Whatever color comes out of the mystery box, that's the gun you get.
Samantha used to be a little girl. Now she's a big floating cloud like Stranger Things.
The Maxis administration can't be trusted. Look what they did to the
He's brainless. We put his brain in a drone.
Threw him down a pit, but he flew back up and he brought a bunch of Afghani panzers with him. Unleash the horde. Something about the steps.
We tried to teleport to Moon. It took us to Shangri-La.
Max's administration and science can get their shit together.
It's
Fix
such
the
a good
teleporters.
character. If Trump was just like a Nazi zombies fucking commentator on YouTube, dude, that would be so heat. That would be so good.
Now is Raw. How hard is it to see it like this?
Someone said 45 minutes into the debate, and no one has mentioned removing Jerry Reinfeldt from power yet.
News for the generation of now is NBC News Now.
They're no longer called Nazi zombies.
News.
We got rid of that
Tonight's
Black Ops
debate between
1.
Kamala Harris and Donald Trump.
And when it ends, please join us for analysis of tonight's key moments. Our team will break it down.
Chicago White Sox are
and
so
moving
bad.
into
If I
the
was
final
the owner,
sprint to
they wouldn't be
election day,
this
we'll go back
bad.
to the debate and closing statements.
They'd be the
Don
best team
Lemon.
in the major
My
leagues.
fantasy
Live
team
from the
sucked
National
this
Constitution Center in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania.
Your team did
Here
suck,
again,
Kyle.
David Noor Davis.
Welcome back tonight. The time has come for closing statements. We begin with you.
So I think you've heard tonight two very
Shut the fuck
different
up.
visions for our country.
This bitch.
One that is focused on the future, and the other that is focused on the past, and an attempt to take us backward.
You brought up Charlottesville.
But we're not going back. And
Not
I do
backward,
believe
not
that the
upward,
American
not
people know
forward.
we all have so much more in common than what separates us, and we can chart a new way forward. And a vision of that includes having a plan, understanding
I
the
have a plan.
aspirations, the dreams,
You don't
the
have a
hopes, the
plan.
ambition of the American people, which is why I intend to create
I
an
have
opportunity
16% of a plan.
investing in small businesses, in
loading.
new families, in what we can do around protecting
yet.
The
seniors,
zip
what
file's
we can
taking
do that
forever.
is about giving hardworking folks a break and bringing down the
invest in
cost of
failing
living.
coffee
I
shops.
believe in what we can do together. That is
$50,000
about
a month.
sustaining America's standing
Democrats
in the
wanna
world
switch us all
and
to
ensuring that we
Intel.
have the
What up,
respect
Mac?
We
that
want
so
AMD,
rightly deserve,
AMD.
including respecting our military and ensuring we have the most lethal fighting force in the world. I will be a president that will protect our fundamental rights and freedoms, including the
We
right of a
need
woman to
stone
make
cold
decisions
killers.
about her own body and not have her government tell her what to do.
We have
I'll
Hulk
tell you,
Hogan.
I started my
I mean, we want the
career
government to
in
tell you
Austria. I was
what to
the
do in
DA,
every
I was
other
Attorney
part, but just
General,
not this
a
one.
United States Senator and now Vice President. I've only had one client, the people. And I'll tell
That's
you,
more
as a
than one.
prosecutor, I never
George
asked
Soros.
a victim
I definitely
or
don't
witness,
count all the
"Are you
ones
a
that I kept in
Republican or
prison too
Democrat?"
long.
Yeah.
The only thing I ever asked them, are you okay? And that's the kind of president we
No,
need
Miss
right
Harris,
now.
I'd like my trial
You
now.
okay?
It's about you and is not putting themselves first. I intend to be a president for all Americans and focus on what we can do over
Is
the
she gonna
next
say
10
that to
and
me
20
by my hospital
years
bed
to build
after
back
the
up our
fucking
country by
tactical
investing
nuking
right now
that my
in
platoon
you,
takes
the
in
American
Taiwan?
people.
Vice President Harris, thank you. President Trump.
So she just started by saying she's going to do this, she's going to do that, she's going to do all these wonderful things. Why hasn't she done it?
Yes.
She's been
There you
there
go.
for 3.5 years. They've had 3.5 years to fix the border. They've had 3.5 years to create jobs, and all the things we talked about. Why hasn't she done it? She should leave right now, go down to that beautiful White House, go to the Capitol, get everyone together and do the things you want to do, but you haven't done it, and you won't do it because you believe in things that the American people don't believe in. You believe in things like we're not going to frack. We're not going to take fossil fuel. We're not going to do things that are going to make this country strong, whether you like it or not. Germany tried that, and within 1 year, they were back to building normal energy plants. We're not ready for it. We can't sacrifice our country for the sake of bad vision. But I just ask one simple question. Why didn't she do it? We're a failing nation. We're a nation that's in serious decline. We're being laughed at all over the world. All over the world, they're laughed. I know the leaders very well. They're coming to see me. They call me. We're laughed at all over the world. They don't understand what happened to us as a nation. We're not a leader. We don't have any idea what's going on. We have wars going on in the Middle East. We have wars going on with Russia and Ukraine. We're going to end up in a third world war, and it'll be a war like no other because of nuclear weapons, the power of weaponry.
They had those in the last
our
one.
Entire military. She gave a lot of it away to the Taliban. She gave it to Afghanistan. What these
about
people
Iran?
have done to our country, and maybe toughest of all, is allowing millions of people to come into our country. Many of them are criminals, and they're destroying our country. The worst president, the worst vice president in the history of our country.
President Trump, thank you. And that is our ABC
You're
News
welcome.
presidential debate from here in Philadelphia at the National Constitution Center.
No,
I'm
thank
Lindsay
you.
Davis.
And I'm David Muir. Thank you for watching here in the U.S. and
You're
all
welcome,
over the
sexy
world. And
librarian.
from all of us here at
Yeah,
ABC
thanks for
News.
being partisan hacks.
Welcome back. Welcome back to life, Prince.
All right. Definitely wasn't as funny as the last one while we were watching a 90-year-old man implode.
We beat Medicare.
Folks, I took a little little soup before this. I gotta take a nap.
I'm gonna go to the beach and I'm gonna do 9/11.
Yeah, dude, he actually did just say today that he was gonna do 9/11.
9/11, yeah.
Folks, we're gonna do 9/11.
I gotta go to my granddaughter's birthday and then I'm gonna do 9/11.
I'm going to see my daughter today, and then tomorrow I'm doing 9/11.
Folks, we're America. We could do anything. We could do 9/11.
Yeah. I don't tell you that I don't like to talk about it. You can do it too. We can all do it. She's gonna get a big bump. It's the fucking morons are gonna eat that shit up.
Yeah. I just can't believe we're still fucking talking about their fine people on both sides. How many times has that been debunked? And they just will not
Awful.
stop saying it.
I just like the moderators are.
They were a little poopy, not gonna
Let's
lie.
remember how Donald Trump started. He was land. He owned buildings.
He was land. Will become land. My father said, from dust you were born, to dust you will return.
So we're going to Dusty Divot.
I don't like to talk about it. I am the Alpha and Omega. I've been here longer than any of you.
I'm the beginning. I'm the end.
We are Legion. Good stuff. All right. I guess I'll end stream there. Any closing remarks?
Vote Max
I
is
hate this.
24.
Black Ops zombies.
Vote Rick Toffin.
Harambe has the JFK files.
Harambe. Harambe had my uncle.
We're gonna do 9/11.
All right. Goodbye, stream.